Yo, YouTube, what is good? It's Aeghis back with another Frost Mage guide. This time we have the War Within. We'll be discussing a lot of things about Frost Mage and PvP. So if this is your guys' first time playing Frost Mage, you have absolutely no mage experience whatsoever, this is 100% the guide for you. There'll be timestamps in the video so you can skip around to the different parts you want. If you are kind of an experienced Frost Mage and you've been around the block before, there still will be some stuff in the video that you can maybe search around through to try to get some tips or maybe just an update on what we're doing in terms of builds and just meta things in general. So I have a little notepad here. We'll be discussing, first of all, the racials, what kind of stat priority we are running in the first season of the War Within, and we'll explain sort of why behind all of that as well. We'll be doing a brief overview of the Mage tree and the Frost tree, an overview of the PvP talents and when to swap, and why we're playing certain talents in certain different situations so that you guys understand when to swap. So not just going to be a copy paste the build. I mean, obviously that will be part of it. You will copy and paste the build in, but there will be some talents, maybe a couple, not a whole lot. So don't be overwhelmed by that. Only a couple changes here and there based off of different matchups and whatnot. How Frost Mage works, how it does damage, the mechanics behind the abilities, the basic rotation, the burst rotation, sustain, and downtime, what to do in those times. And then we will go over the basic rotation if we are using a different set of talents. The reason why I'll include this is because right now Frost Mage is very overtuned in a way, where Ice Lance is primarily the damaging button that we are using. In the future, when I do predict that we'll get nerfed, there might be a different build that we will use, and those different builds will simply just include Glacial and Ray in them as well. So kind of covering some bases there just in case Frost Mage does it receive some sort of tuning in regard to Ice Lance. The pet management from the water elemental, and we'll talk about keybinds during that time as well because those kind of go hand in hand. Then we're going to go over some mage specific topics such as utility, defensives, and mobility. This isn't really tied to Frost Mage. This is more of a mage, generally speaking, part of the guide. And then we'll have be efficient under pressure. So while you're being trained, a lot of people on Mage seem to really struggle when being trained. We'll go ahead and do a gameplay example commentary so that we can get in-game footage and I can walk you through why certain decisions are being made. And then some more basic stuff here, but important, macros and how to set up your add-ons. So anyways, let's just get started with things. Okay, real quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on the racials, but I'll give a quick overview of each one and sort of my philosophy behind racials. Racials, I think, should not be taken too seriously in this game. I think the people who should severely care about their racials are the players who are pushing rank 1 or the players who are doing tournaments. If that does not fit you, then again, you can play any racial you want. If you really want to min-max like all these rank 1s and tournament players, then what I recommend is playing Night Elf and getting very good with Shadow Meld.
Shadow Meld is also known for its more advanced ability to immune projectiles. Any spell that has a travel time can be immuned by pressing Shadow Meld within a small window of the cast landing.
Shadow Meld essentially nullifies any ability projectile and a couple other use cases for it as well. So one example I can give you here is let's just take a familiar spell, Glacial Spike, for example. So a mage is casting Glacial Spike on you, the cast finishes, the Glacial Spike is in the air, and you press Shadow Meld at any point while it's in the air and it won't do any damage to you. Now there's other use cases with it as well, but we won't cover that in depth right now. Just know that Shadow Meld is a very versatile ability. It takes some awareness to understand how to use it. So if you're brand new to WoW, maybe you want something a bit more passive, I'd recommend either playing Human or Orc. Orc has a very nice racial because you can essentially macro the Blood Fury into your on-use abilities, such as Icy Veins will be an example for Frost Mage, but it's essentially an intellect increase whenever you press it, so it's just going to give your spells a little bit more damage. And then you have the stun reduction as well, so 10% stun reduction on all sorts of stuns that are coming in. Now for Alliance, the second best racial that we'll put here is Human. Human gives you another trinket essentially. However, this one is only for stuns and shares a cooldown with your medallion. However, instead of being a 2-minute cooldown, it's a 1 minute 30. So you can think of Human as you have a trinket every 1.5 minutes, but the Human one can only be used on stuns. Void Elf is another one that I think is a little bit overhyped. I think a lot of newer players sort of turn to Void Elf because it sounds good on paper. You get no cast pushback, which is, again, overhyped in my opinion. I don't think I've ever lost a game because of a spell being pushed back 0.01 seconds. And then the extra mobility option that you get from the Spatial Rift, I believe it's called. You essentially click the racial, it'll send a little squiggly thing, and then if you re-click it, you will teleport to that spot. However, I think my philosophy behind racials is I like to have racials that sort of fill a void in my class. For example, gives you something that you don't really have already. And I think Mage has a lot of mobility in its toolkit, so Void Elf for me, not a super amazing pick. However, if you are a newer player and you are using your mobility a little bit inefficiently and not really trading your blink charges for other people's mobility options 1-for-1, then Void Elf could be a solid pick as like a kind of a get out of a jail free card if you do use that mobility a little bit inefficiently, which is why I think a lot of players kind of lean towards it. Not dissing it. If that's what you guys want to play, then go ahead. And then for the Horde side, the second best one, as we said, Orc was the first. I think Undead or Tauren would probably have to take the spot for number 2. This I think comes down to personal preference. So this one is kind of like Human, except it is only for fears rather than stuns. You get Will of the Forsaken. And then this one is sort of the fun one, the one that fills the void of the toolkit for Mage. Mage does not have a stun. Tauren gives you War Stomp, and War Stomp is very cool because it's a 2-second AoE stun. I think it's not like, I would not pick Tauren in a tournament, but it is very, very fun to use because you can use it with Shimmer. And Shimmer basically allows you to blink while casting. So you can start the War Stomp over here and then Shimmer and end up at your target location. So something that I like to do with Tauren is I will get a damage rotation rolling on someone. If I notice that that damage rotation is actually super efficient and a lot of damage is incoming, I'll use like the Comet Storm Meteor with Icy Veins, and then like Flurry with Lance and Orb Down and Blizzard 2, Ring of Fire is taking on them. And when all that damage is sort of going to hit at the same time, I'll Shimmer War Stomp on someone, send in the Shattered Frostfire Bolt, and then suddenly that 2-second stun actually is sort of a lethal interrupt for them because of all this damage hitting at one time. So again, Tauren, kind of a for fun pick. You can get some value out of War Stomp. I think that's that'll do it for the racials. I will reiterate that racials are not that big of a deal. Any player could get any sort of rating or rank 1 on any racials. I think they're really only to be super duper min-maxed if that's the kind of playstyle you enjoy. You enjoy being highly competitive and having every competitive advantage, or you are a tournament player. So yeah. Okay, so now for the stat priority, I actually had to log on to the beta here, as on the actual game itself, there is still no rated vendor. Can't really buy the honor gear yet, so we don't have, I'm still in my leveling gear, but on the beta we have full access to the gear that we'll be using in the rated PvP season. The stat priority we'll be going with here is haste versatility. The reason for this is that in the first seasons of expansions, secondary stats are very low. If any of you guys are not fresh in the War Within and you played Dragonflight before, you'll notice that in the later seasons, the values of these secondary stats were extremely high. We would have like 35% versatility, 35% mastery, and then like 40 or 50% haste. In the War Within, in season 1, these stats are very low. That's always how it is at the start. So I think the idea here will be to have at least 28 to like 30% versatility, and then put the rest into haste. This guy says sub. Hello. Just saw your video today. Subscribe. Guys, subscribe to the YouTube. No, but so yeah, the stat priority that we'll be going with, it will be haste verse. Like I said, about 20 to 30% versatility. Put the rest into haste. And then, yeah, you can see a lot of the gems and enchants here. I'm just gemming haste. And I just try to get as much haste as I can on all my pieces of gear. We have the speed enchant on the cape. The crystalline radiance enchant on that. We are rocking the 2 set here on Frost Mage. Play more affliction. Will do. Guys, if you want to see some more affliction. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Ice Lance damage increased by 8%. We do want to go with that. So we'll be rocking the 2 set when it comes out. And we're buying the Haste Mastery chest and the Crit Haste legs. So those will be the best pieces for that. And then, as you can see, we have the Crystalline Radiance enchant on the chest there. The Speed, 1000 speed enchant on the wrist. Again, haste first. And then we have the Authority of Radiant Power on the staff. Haste first as well for this. We're rocking the Alacrity trinket with the medallion. We have 2 crafted rings, both haste first, with the precog gem in one of them. So this is how you're going to get precognition. If you guys don't know, precognition basically states that if someone uses an interrupt on you when you're not casting, you'll get 4 seconds of immunity to all CC and interrupts. So this essentially means whenever you do what's called a fake cast, where you start a cast and then you use your stop casting macro to interrupt yourself from casting it, you can essentially fake out interrupts this way. And people will use them on you as you cancel it, and you'll get 4 seconds of immunity, which will allow you to continue casting whatever it is that you were trying. So it's a way that you can actually outplay enemy interrupts. So that gem will be very crucial to get early on as soon as it's available. Then for the embellishments, we're going to be using these woven dusk pieces from the crafted vendor. Now this, I'm not 100% sure if this will end up being the best throughout the entire season. However, I think it is a really good thing to have. I think the uptime on it is pretty decent in arena, so it's going to give you a nice little haste proc, as you can read by that little set bonus that we get there. And you can craft that to whatever stats you prefer. So I did haste mastery on one with verse mastery on the other. I think on beta that was just the first one that I got, but I think, yeah, if you really wanted to make sure that you were doing good on stats, you could put those into verse haste as well. And then let's see here, we have the tier leg pants with the 747 intellect and the 230 stamina enchant on those. Again, that's the tier set. And then for the belt, we just have the haze first. I don't have an add-on on here. There is an add-on called True Stat Values, which I recommend everyone download, and it'll tell you when you're going to get to the capped amount of a certain secondary stat. So what I recommend is getting as much verse and haste as possible till you are capped out on those stats. I don't think in this first season it'll be too possible to do that, considering if you see here, I have about 24% haste from my gear. But yeah, basically all you guys need to know, verse haste, very good. Like I said, I have the rest of the gear layout here if you guys want to copy that for the future. Okay, now we'll do a little bit of a brief talent overview. So you can see here on the left side of the tree, this one is pretty much solidified. We have Ice Barrier into Ice Block, Spell Steal, Mirror Images. Down in the middle here we have Overflowing Energy, which is largely just a passive crit damage modifier. You don't really have to think too much about that at all. Shifting Power is a really good spell, so we're going to take that. Then Incanter's Flow, Remove Curse, Double Arcane Warding with Alter Time. Then we have Quick-Witted, used to be called Grounding Surge, kind of caught me off guard there. Slow, Master of Time, Blast Wave, Shimmer versus Ice Flows, which is something we'll talk about right now, I guess. But yeah, so Shimmer is essentially an ability that lets you shimmer while casting. So you can blink while casting a spell. The counterpart to that is that you can't blink out of stuns. So if you were to get locked down, you can't just use the classic mage blink talent to blink out of the sun. But the cool part about Shimmer is that you get 2 of them and they're off the GCD. So real quick, if you don't know what the GCD is, you can see every time I use a spell, all these cooldowns will have a little bit of a timer where you can't press it. Shimmer isn't like that. You can just press both back to back, and you can do that while you are casting a spell, like I said. So very cool ability. Sometimes you change out of this whenever you fight classes that have a lot of stuns on a very short cooldown, but don't make the mistake of playing Ice Flows just because you feel like you're being stunned a lot. There are only a couple classes that I actually take Ice Flows into. I think a lot of mages will end up falling back on Ice Flows because they feel like they're being locked down too much. But in my experience, this is more of a positioning flaw with Shimmer. So a lot of people will just switch to ice flows, like I said, but I will only switch to ice flows when I'm versus a sub rogue or maybe a feral druid. Those are kind of like the only two classes that I'll ever really take this talent on a frost mage. Shimmer is a very underrated spell. I think a lot of people miss out on the value of it, but it essentially allows you to move around the map a lot more free than other targets because you can do it in the blink of an eye. Like, there's no global cooldown, and you can catch people off guard with casts because you can do it while you're moving, like I said, or you can do it while you're casting. And this allows you to position very nicely. Now, a lot of the times, people will get on top of you as the mage, and this is where I see a lot of people make a mistake here. With Shimmer, you need to use your mobility very early. So if two people collapse on you, you don't want to wait till you get stunned, for example. Like if two players collapse on you here, I'm standing right here and two players are hitting me. As soon as they connect onto me, I want to Shimmer. And then if they are to use another option, for example, then you need to use another one, like Displace. And then just keep doing that whenever they get on top of you. We'll go over this more in the mobility section of the guide, but I just wanted to give that little introduction there to those two abilities. Now this is another one that is exclusive to the War Within. We have Ring of Frost versus Ice Nova. If you guys played in Dragonflight, we had these two talents at the same time. They were not choice nodes, as these are called. So on Frost Mage, Ice Nova is actually a very solid pick almost all the time because it gives you the ability to utilize Shatter on more of your spells, which is going to increase your damage by a lot. Now, this choice node on the other two mage specs like Fire and Arcane don't directly increase your damage, so there's a little bit of a wiggle room there. But on Frost Mage, you can play Ice Nova pretty much 100% of the times. Sometimes you can change this to Ring of Frost versus like a Restoration Druid, for example, so that you can land some sort of CC on our druids if they're in bear form or tree form or whatever. But that would be the only time I would actually change out of Ice Nova. So going forward, we have Blast Wave, Energized Barriers. This is just going to make it to where whenever you use your barrier, you'll remove any snare effect on you, like that. And then Volatile Blast Wave. This is going to make your Blast Wave similar to an Elemental Shaman's, where you're going to be able to use it and it'll blast people very far. Tome of Antonitis, just a flat haste increase. Dragon's Breath versus Supernova. Pretty much always going to pick Dragon's Breath here on the Frost Mage. Very rare cases that you'll pick Supernova, almost not even worth discussing. These talents over here, we don't really take them too often. Flow of Time is going to reduce the cooldown of your Shimmer by 2 seconds. This is actually nerfed in PvP, so in PvP this will be a 2-second reduction. It's very good. Temporal Velocity is a movement speed increase. We got Time Manipulation, Displacement, Accumulative Shielding, Greater Invis, Barrier Diffusion with Mass Barrier, and Time Anomaly. Now, the most important ones to understand here are Master of Time reduces the cooldown of your altar, and altar will reset the cooldown of your Shimmer. So if we look here, I drop an altar time at this location, I use a Shimmer charge. When I return to my old location here, I actually get that Shimmer charge back. So very important talent to understand there. Shimmer we've already discussed. Ice Note we've already discussed. Mirror Images is like a little bit of a damage reduction. Whenever you drop it, you can see you get a nice little buff here. Damage reduction reduced by 20 while your images are active. Now these images will disappear when you take direct damage. So even one melee attack, one would disappear, another melee attack, another one would disappear. So they don't last too long, kind of a ish defensive. Time Manipulation is very good because this will reduce the cooldown of certain loss of control effects. So if we put a couple things on cooldown here, such as DB, Ice Nova, Frost Nova, Snowdrift, things like that, you'll see every shattered lance reduces the cooldown on these by 2 seconds. So 13 down to 10, 5, Ice Lance, now we have it back. This one's at 21, 19, 16. So you can really farm a lot of your loss of control abilities back. Loss of control really just applying to anything that takes the control away from another player. So Nova, Snowdrift, Dragon's Breath, Ice Nova counts as that as well. Not sure about Blast Wave, actually. We can do a little test roll here. No, Blast Wave does not count. Displacement just lets you displace back to a location whenever you press it. So boom. Now we have a greater invisibility. This is going to be your major damage reduction cooldown. Don't be mistaken in assuming that this is just for invisibility at the start of the match. You want to use this in high burst moments. So you can use that for the bottom portion there. You take 60% reduced damage after you reappear. Then we have just some barrier talents that help you get it back a little bit quicker. Mass barrier is obviously very good. And then time anomaly, which is a very important cooldown. A very important proc, because it'll give you icy veins or time warp, which are huge haste modifiers. So you want to be watching out for those so you can really push out a lot of damage. Alright, for the frost side of the tree here, we start with Ice Lance, Frozen Orb, Flurry. We'll talk about all these abilities whenever we do our guide on how to do damage. Then we have Fingers of Frost, which will generate you free Ice Lances. Shatter, which is going to be a very important talent for discussing how to actually make sure all your spells are critting on the target. Frostbite, which is a random brute. Piercing Cold is just a nice modifier to certain abilities that we have. And then we'll go to Winter's Blessing here in the middle. This is going to be very nice in Season 1 of The War Within, because this will give us a lot more haste values than other classes, especially in a season where we are going to be struggling for secondary stats. This will be very nice. You gain 10% more of the haste stat from all sources. So very, very insane talent there. Everlasting, this will just make your orb do 30% damage and have its have its duration increased. Flurry now has 2 charges. Frostbolt, Ice Lance, and Flurry deal 15% increased damage. Frozen Orb increases Ice Lance damage by 15%. This is a little passive buff you don't have to really worry too much about. Just know it's a spell damage modifier that you get. Comet Storm, this is a very nice ability, especially paired with the Frostfire tree for our hero talents. It's basically just going to call down a series of comets, and you can shatter these, so you can increase the crit chance on all those. It's going to make for some nice burst. Wintertide increases Frostbolt damage. Fingers of Frost empowered Ice Lances deal 20% increased damage to frozen targets. We'll talk more about that later. And then Ice Caller, each time Blizzard deals damage, the Frozen Orb cooldown will be reduced. That's solid. Icicles deals 10% more damage, very solid as well, and gives your Icicles a chance to proc Fingers of Frost. Sub-Zero, this talent deals 10% more frost damage to targets that are rooted and frozen. Again, we'll talk about this later. Icy Veins, this is basically just going to give you 20% haste and summon your Welly, which will also give you Frigid Empowerment, which will increase your damage by 15%. So Icy Veins, not only just a haste modifier, also a damage modifier. Splintering Cold will basically just say that your Frostbolt and Flurry will have a 30% chance to grant you 2 Icicles. Now, this one is up for debate on whether or not it can be changed out, so we'll talk about that here in a second. Chain Reaction, every lance you do is going to increase the damage by 2%, up to 10. So very solid to keep this buff up as long as possible. Ice Lance being your main source of damage. Splitting Cold makes your Icicles and your Ice Lance split to 2 nearby targets, as well as your Glacial Spike, if you're playing it. This will increase the duration of Icy Veins and make your Ice Lances extend your Icy Veins for an additional 0.5 seconds per lance. Freezing Rain will be solid here because it makes your Blizzard instant whenever you send your orb out. And this will synergize very nicely with Ice Caller, which farms back your orb when Blizzard deals damage. So if you can get that on multiple targets, you can farm your orb back very quickly. Glacial Assault, your Comet Storm now increases the damage enemies take from you by 6%, and Flurry has a 25% chance on each hit to call down this Glacial Assault. Now for the last 2 talents here, we have Freezing Winds. While Frozen Orb is active, you gain a Fingers of Frost every 5 seconds in PvP. So I think if I enable my PvP modifier, it might say it. Yeah, so with the PvP modifier, this goes every 5 seconds. And with Orb lasting 12 seconds, we'll get 2 Fingers procs over the course of our Orb. And then we have Hailstones, which will make our Ice Lances on frozen targets have a 100% chance to generate an Icicle. And this will just add a little bit of an additional amount of damage to your lances because they'll summon Icicles with them. If you guys are not sure what an Icicle is, we'll talk about that a little bit later when we go over the damage. So now to show you a little bit of an alternative build here that you could play. So Splintering Cold, like I said, is the talent that you could potentially give up to pick up something like Glacial Spike. So Glacial Spike is a big casted massive spike of ice, as it says here. It merges your current icicles into it, and then it does a large burst damage and will freeze the target for 4 seconds. And you can shatter this as well, so you can make this crit a lot more often by shattering it. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then this last point is the one that you'll put into Ray of Frost. However, you will need one more to go down here into Cryopathy, which will increase the damage of your Ray of Frost for every time that you Ice Lance, stacking up to 10 times, and that will cap out at 50% increased damage on Lance. Ray. So you definitely need this if you're going to play Ray. When I look here at the talents as to what we can drop, it would probably have to be Glacial Assault. So you lose out on a little bit of consistent damage from that, but you'll pick up a big burst. So yeah, if you guys do like these spells, you can play these. For right now, we're rocking primarily the instant cast build, which is the one that I recommend everyone playing. If you're watching this maybe post Ice Lance nerf, then yeah, we'll likely be back to this build here. And this is going to be more casted damage because you'll have Glacial and Ray. Ray is a big beam that will essentially just do damage and then a larger amount of damage per tick of each Ray. It's a big channel, 1 minute cooldown. But for now, we're rocking this purely instant cast build. This is the strongest one at the moment. Like I said, if this build does end up getting nerfed, the Ice Lance build, and you're watching this, maybe I'll even post in the comments, you know, hey, the instant cast build is nerfed, now we're playing this, whatever. This will likely be the build that we go to. So just keep an eye out for that. Just have them both there. And then there is sometimes that I play this. This is called Coldest Snap. Now this is a very, very niche situation, but the cooldown of Cone of Cold will be increased to 45 seconds. But if the cone hits 3 or more enemies, it resets the cooldown of Orb and Comet Storm. So the reason I think this is good is if you fight pet classes such as Demo Warlock or Unholy DK or BM Hunter. You can really abuse this because you can Orb and then Cone of Cold at least 3 of the pets or whatever, as long as there's 3 targets, and you can get your Orb and your Comet Storm back. So that's something that you can abuse. It's kind of niche. Like I said, I don't do it often. I only do it into those 3 particular classes. But that's about it for the Mage tree and for the Frost tree. Now we'll go over the hero talents and the PvP talents. Okay, real quick to talk about PvP talents. We have a couple here that are pretty good and then a couple that are okay. So just to start off with the ones that I pretty much never change, that will be Frost Bomb. Places a Frost Bomb on the target. After 5 seconds, the bomb explodes, dealing a certain amount of damage, and does a certain amount of AoE damage to all other enemies within 10 yards. All affected targets are slowed by 70%. If the Frost Bomb is dispelled before it explodes, you'll grant a charge of Brain Freeze. And Brain Freeze is essentially just a free flurry charge with increased damage. So Frost Bomb, you place it on the target, ticks down, and then right before it explodes, you try to shatter it with something, and then it does a big burst. So this is really good because it's a nice added bit of burst to your rotation. And it's nice because if it does get dispelled, then you get that additional flurry charge, and that'll help you continue to spam Ice Lance. Then we have Ring of Fire. So guys, Ring of Fire is really, really good in this expansion because the health pools are so high. We're at like 6 million HP in full gear. So Ring of Fire, summons a Ring of Fire for 8 seconds at the target location. Enemies entering the ring burn for 18% of their total health over 8 seconds. Or sorry, 6. This is really nice because if you can get Ring of Fire on like 3 different targets, they're all gonna burn for 18% of their total health over 6 seconds. So this is really strong, especially like I said, because we have 6 million HP. So Ring of Fire, when we sort by some of the details that I had on beta, this is one of your top damaging abilities. So it's very important to make sure you're getting value out of this. Another reason why stacking haste is very good is because you'll reduce the cast time of this. Ring of Fire is actually a pretty long cast, but with a lot of haste, you can really nullify how long that cast is and make sure that you're getting good value out of that. Next, we have sort of our flex talent here, which is the one that you can kind of change around. I've been opting for Snowdrift kind of because it's a nice little stun. You can walk up and you can AoE stun a couple targets, and you can burst them while they're stunned, and it does give you access to Sub-Zero. So it won't only just shatter it, it'll also give you that 10% damage bonus. So you can think of it like whenever you attack a target in a Snowdrift, it's going to do quite a bit more damage than just a normal shatter. So that's another reason why I've been liking it. You can also use it to kind of CC people a little bit extra long. Like if you go in for a DB sheep on someone, for example, like DB into sheep. I can't really sheep, but we can just act like that's the sheep. And then, you know, when that sheep's ending, you can kind of just Snowdrift off for maybe an extra little bit of crowd control off of your already decently long crowd control chain with DB sheep. Now keep in mind, Snowdrift does do a little bit of damage, so it will break the sheep if you try to set up off of it. It's kind of an inconsistent ability because a lot of people can also get out of it when they use any sort of movement speed ability. So if you're on top of a paladin or a druid and the pal uses freedom, it will reset that timer, that arm timer. It has a 2-second arm timer. So it can be a little inconsistent at times and won't always stun the target, but I still find it to be pretty decent. It's also reset by the time manipulation talent over here, so it's not too bad. Master Shepherd basically just makes your sheep not heal people anymore, and then whenever you get Master Shepherd bonus, so basically when a target is in a sheep, not after you sheep someone, it's while someone is currently sheeped, you get 25% movement speed and 12% versatility. So I found this talent to be a little bit less value in the War Within when I was practicing in arenas on the beta, because there's a lot of AoE spells in the game now. Basically every single spell that you have will send some sort of AoE out to other targets. So polymorphs are breaking now more than ever, so I've kind of found that this talent isn't that great. I hope they change this talent in some way to be maybe after you sheep someone you get the bonus for X amount of seconds, or maybe they make polymorph not break to AoE spells or something like that. But for now, until some of those changes are implemented, if they ever do, I'm not really taking this talent too much. And then the third one I would take here is Concentrated Coolness over Snowdrift. If you aren't going for any stuns or it's just not working for you, then you can take Concentrated Coolness, which just lets you aim your orb and increase the damage of it a little bit. So you can just place the orb with your mouse anywhere, and it will do a small amount more damage, 10% more. So those are pretty much the only PvP talents that I'm ever taking. Ethereal Blink's not very good because it at most gives you 5 seconds back on the shimmer, and that's assuming you blink through the most amount of targets. But the thing is that you're using your shimmers to run away from people. You're not really gonna try to line up some targets here and then blink like that. That's a bad blink just to start with. So it kind of makes you use shimmer in a weird way too if you try to squeak value out of it. Icewall is a pretty decent talent. You can go for some crazy plays. I think I can't use it because I'm in the city. Oh, I can. Like, it's kind of cool. You can get some cool walls. Maybe you're bursting on this guy right here. You get him really low, and this is his healer, this guy on the right, and you can just place a wall and like kind of separate them, and then continue to burst on this guy. I kind of messed it up, but you get the point. And then you can click the wall keybind again to deactivate the wall yourself. So not a bad talent, kind of a fun one. Sometimes can kind of cheese some kills in there. Ice Former I would never touch. Icy Feed is currently bugged, so it doesn't even really work. And then Mass Invis, you could take this, however I don't really ever do that because you have to give up Mass Barrier as well, so you have to do like kind of 2 changes in one just to play it, so hardly ever do that. But anyways, let's talk about the hero talents now. Alright, so the 2 hero talent trees that we have available to us on Frost is FROSTFIRE and SPELLSLINGER. So first we'll cover FROSTFIRE because I believe that to be the one that we'll be picking for a majority of the matchups that we'll be in. So FROSTFIRE Mastery. Now try to stay with me here. A lot of these things sound complicated when you first read them, but a lot of this stuff is just passive things that sort of work in the background to your benefit. But I believe having a certain understanding of what they do is going to be important. So your damaging fire spells will generate you 1 stack of fire mastery, and your frost spells will generate you 1 stack of frost mastery. That's pretty basic, right? Now, to explain what those 2 different masteries are, fire mastery will increase your haste by 1%, and frost mastery will increase your mastery by 1%. And these stack up to 6 times, and the buff lasts for 14 seconds. To note, adding stacks does not refresh the duration. So now we'll go on to the second row here. These ones are pretty straightforward. So imbued warding, ice barrier also cast a blazing barrier at 25% effectiveness. So you basically get 2 barriers whenever you press it. Now keep in mind that the every barrier for Mage is at 75% effectiveness as a PvP modifier. So every barrier is nerfed by 25%. So essentially this other one that you get here sort of fills that gap a little bit. I'm not sure if the barrier that you get is also nerfed by 25%, but not sure. And then we have Meltdown for the second one here. And this will just basically let you move during Ice Block. And then whenever you come out of Ice Block, you get a blazing barrier. So this one's not really that good in comparison because this one will get value on every barrier, whereas this one you're only getting value on block. And barrier is something that happens every 25 seconds, whereas blocks every like 4 minutes. So this one's way more value. Now we have Frostfire Bolt, which is going to replace Frostbolt. So launch a bolt of Frostfire at the enemy, causing a certain amount of Frostfire damage, and will also slow the movement speed of them by 50% and cause a small dot damage on the target. And this will generate both stacks of that Frostfire Mastery that we have up here. Again, don't really have to think about that too much. Now we have 2 choices here. Elemental Affinity. The cooldown of your fire spells is reduced by 30%. Or Flame and Frost. Cold Snap additionally resets the cooldown of your fire spells. Now this one definitely gets more value when we think about it, right? Because it brings our Ring of Fire down from 25 to 21. Our DB goes from 45 to 32. Fire Blast is reduced by a little bit, I believe. And I believe that's all. Oh, Blast Wave as well. Blast Wave goes from 25 to 18. So this is very good. This makes Blast Wave usable way more often. Ring of Fire, like we said, with how strong that ability is now, is also very good. And the DB being on a shorter cooldown is very nice as well. So this one is going to be a good amount of value for the talent. Isothermic Core, this one is very strong. So the frost portion of this we'll be paying attention to is that first line. Comet Storm now also calls down a meteor at 100% effectiveness. So you can basically see every time that we use Comet, the meteor comes down as well. So that makes your Comet Storm a way more bursty cooldown than it was previously. And you can shatter the meteor as well, so you can almost guarantee that it'll crit. Severe Temperatures, casting damaging frost or fire spells has a high chance to increase the damage of your next Frostfire Bolt by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. So you can see when I just do damage, I get this buff, and you can see it stacks up pretty easily. Like we're already at 5 stacks, and now my next Frostfire Bolt will do 50% more. And just to skip a line here, we'll go down one and go to Frostfire Empowerment. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire Bolt to be instant cast and do 50% more and explode for 80% of its damage. And it will give you the full benefit of Frostfire Mastery. So you can see here I have one of those procs. Whenever I send in that Frostfire Bolt, it does a fair amount of damage, explodes for a fair amount, and gives me full stacks, my full haste and mastery modifiers. So that's primarily how you'll be spending this severe temperature buff. Severe temperatures. So yeah, you passively stack that up by doing damage. Just your basic damage rotation, you passively get that. And then you'll occasionally get Frostfire Bolt procs from your Frost and Fire spells. So just by doing damage, you'll get that proc. Should happen here any second. If it's a long time in between your procs, you can always cast one too. I don't think it's like super efficient, but it does do a lot of damage if you're sitting on that buff for too long. So could be worth if you're really getting screwed over on procs like I am right now. Like, see, I'm almost back to my next severe temperatures. So I'll send one more casted frostbolt in. It's very important, I think, to track that buff so you know that when you've been sitting on it for too long. As you can see here, I'm getting really screwed over on instant frostfire bolt procs. This is like the longest I've ever gone without getting one. Normally it's like way higher than this, but you can see I finally get one here. And then, yeah, I can use that with my severe temperatures buff, and I'll make sure to shatter it as well. So yeah, very strong set of talents there. Now we'll go back a row here. Your frost and fire spells have a chance to trigger an additional bolt of frostfire, dealing a certain amount of damage. This effect generates frostfire mastery when activated. So that just gives you a stack of each. So you can basically think of this, you can see the damage of it. It's just a little bit of extra added damage to your abilities. Just a small amount of pad damage, if you will. Now we have excess frost. This means that whenever you hit the max stacks of frost mastery, your next flurry will cast Ice Nova at 125% effectiveness, but it won't actually give you the Nova part of the Ice Nova. It's just the damage. And then whenever you consume that proc, the cooldown of your comment will be reduced. So we'll go ahead and start off with the comment here, and we'll build up our frost mastery stacks here by using frost spells. And you can see here, whenever I get to, or whenever that reaching maximum stacks. Let me get to max stacks. There we go. So I have one now. So yeah, once you hit 6, you get this, and then you can see when I press flurry, it does a little bit of extra damage there with the Ice Nova. And that damage actually adds up because it's at 125% effectiveness. So, and then we have the same thing, but for whenever you reach max stacks of fire, and that will conjure a living bomb on your next lance. So you can see when we get to that buff here in a sec. Now we have it. So our next lance will put living bombs on the target. And the living bombs don't really do too much damage, but the living bombs will grant you brain freeze when they explode. So it's kind of important to make sure that you're tracking these two buffs. For one, you can know when that Ice Nova, this one's not so important, but having comment on cooldown when you get it is a form of min-maxing. And then whenever you have this proc here, you want to make sure you're not already at 2 flurry stacks because you'll get an additional one back. Then we have Flash Freeze Burn. This one, all you need to know is that whenever you press Icy Veins, you just get max stacks of these, and you get a Frost Fire Bolt. So yeah, so you'll see here when I pop Veins, I get the it grants you the, so you have to have 2 of the stacks before you press it, I see. And then whenever you press Icy Veins, you'll get the instant Frostfire Bolt, so you can send that in, and yeah, then you'll get these 2 procs, and then you can just generate those, and the Living Bomb will explode, and it'll give you that flurry back. So that's basically Frostfire Mage. It's pretty cool. It's very strong. The Frostfire Bolts hit very hard. Now we'll go over to Spellslinger. So Spellslinger is not a tree that I've used often on Frost. I think Frostfire is a lot stronger, but I think Spellslinger is also very good if you want to play it. So Splintering Sorcery, whenever you consume Winter's Chill, conjure a Frost Splinter that fires at your target. Again, try to keep up with me here. These talents have a way of sounding confusing, but trust me, once you kind of play around with them for a little bit, it's pretty straightforward. So whenever you consume Winter's Chill, conjure a Frost Splinter that fires at your target. What a Frost Splinter is it conjures raw frost magic into a sharp projectile that deals a small amount of damage, and these splinters will embed themselves, dealing a small amount of damage over 18 seconds. So Winter's Chill is this buff that we get when we flurry. When you consume it, you'll see we get another debuff on the target, and that's an embedded Frost Splinter. So that's that first one there. And then we have Augury Abounds. Casting Icy Veins conjures 8 Frost Splinters. And during Icy Veins, whenever you conjure one, you have an 100% chance to conjure an additional one. So I don't know why they worded it like that. They could have just said during Icy Veins, you conjure double the amount of splinters. But yeah, whenever you cast Veins here, your next ability will put 8 splinters on the target. And then that just adds a certain amount of damage and procs your Splinter Storm, which we'll go over later. Let's get this guy to stop attacking here. Then we have Controlled Instincts. While a target is under the effect of Blizzard, 30% of the damage that you deal, 30% of the direct damage dealt by a Splinter is also dealt to nearby enemies. So if we put a Blizzard down and we consume our Winter's Chill to get the Splinter, it'll put the Splinter on other targets as well. Or the damage from the Splinter will hit the other targets, the direct damage. Enemies damaged by your Frozen Orb conjures a Frost Splinter up to 4%, and additionally the Frozen Orb damage is increased by 10%. Then we have this one, which is kind of cool. You have 40% increased movement speed during Alter Time, and this pairs up very nicely with Temporal Velocity, which gives you 40% movement speed whenever you alter back. So a lot of movement speed in that as well. The other option is that Displace has a 50% longer duration and a 25% longer range. So additionally, this one is kind of cool too, because the Displacement Beacon will last 12 seconds and it will be available from this range right here. So that's a pretty long distance to displace. So it's pretty good. So you can play either one of those. I kind of like the movement speed during Alter, but it's honestly kind of a personal preference thing. Maybe this one is a little bit better. And then we have Reactive Barrier. This one's going to be 100% the pick here. Your Ice Barrier can absorb up to 50% more health based on your missing health. Max effectiveness when under 50%. So if we'll just say a scenario here, you're at 50% HP, you press Barrier, it's going to absorb 50% more damage. I think this got nerfed a little bit in PvP. I'm not sure to what amount, but it's still very strong. Then we have Volatile Magic. Whenever an embedded Frost Splinter is removed, it explodes and deals a certain amount of damage to nearby enemies. So these splinters explode whenever they hit to 8. We can go over that a little bit later. And then the other option here is every time you conjure a splinter, it increases the damage of your next Ice Nova. This one's not very good. I would never play this one. Ice Nova doesn't do that much damage, and it has to ramp up to 60 times, so it's not that good. Shifting Shards. Shifting Power fires a barrage of 8 Frost Splinters at random enemies within 40 yards over its duration. So this one's kind of nice because you can get your Splinter Storm to proc more often if you shift near people. Honestly, you don't even need to be near people. It's 40 yards. So this makes Shifting Power do like more damage, which is kind of cool, I suppose. Force of Will. This one's just passive. Gain 2% increased crit chance. Gain 5% increased crit damage. It's not bad, especially considering that Frost Mage is kind of all about critting. Then we have Spell Frost Teachings. Direct damage from splinters has a small chance to reset the cooldown of Frozen Orb and increase all damage dealt by Frozen Orb for 20 seconds, or by 20% for 10 seconds. So this is honestly one of the better talents in the Spellslinger tree because you can get your orb back just from random procs. Then we have the capstone here for the splinter, for the Spellslinger. Whenever you have 8 or more embedded Frost Splinters, you automatically cast Splinter Storm at your target. So we've been building up our splinters on the target. We hit 8. What it'll do is it'll shatter all of them and deal their remaining periodic damage instantly. Conjure a Frost Splinter for each splinter shattered, then unleash them all in a devastating barrage, dealing a certain amount of frost damage to your target for each splinter. And it also applies Winter's Chill, which is you can get an additional Ice Lance in there. So, like I said, that might have sounded a little confusing, but to break it down for you just a little bit, whenever you do damage to a target, you have a chance to leave a splinter. Whenever you consume a Winter's Chill, you'll leave a splinter. So we can build up our splinters on a target, and then whenever we reach 8, we'll go ahead and use Icy Veins here a sec. And then you can see here, we got an orb reset, which automatically put Winter's Chill on the target, which was solid. So yeah, we've already gotten another orb. And then you can see here, once we hit a certain amount, it all explodes. So if we look at the damage breakdown, you can see it's just essentially a small amount of added pad damage, as we'll call it. And then whenever you shifting, it'll fire a barrage of splinters at targets. So you can see we got some there. And then whenever you veins, you can automatically get 8 on the target there. So again, it's really just a small amount of added damage on your already damaging spells. So when you're just doing your rotation here, you're just going to do a small amount of pad damage with it. The reason why I feel like, oh, see, we got a reset orb there, which puts also 2 Winter's Chills on the target, so more Ice Lances. The reason why I think that Frostfire is better is because while this is an expansion that does reward pad damage, I think the secondary stats you get from the Frostfire Mastery is going to help you a lot, especially in Season 1. I think Frostfire Bolt does a lot of damage, so the amount of pad damage that you're doing here is going to get made up for with the Frostfire Infusion with the Frostfire Bolt mixed with the Severest Temperature modifier. And then also the extra barrier that you get on this is going to be very helpful. And then also the cooldown reset on Brain Freeze from the Living Bombs is going to be very helpful. And to mention the Comet Storm cooldown reduction as well. Plus the shorter cooldown on Ring of Fire from Elemental Affinity is very good because Ring of Fire does a lot of damage considering we have 6 million HP. So overall, I think Frostfire has more going for it, whereas Spellslinger sort of just has passive damage that you can't super duper notice. But it does have some cool things with it, like the orb reset, the increased critical strike damage, the movement on altar with the longer displays, and then the barrier whenever you're missing a certain amount of HP. I'll be primarily playing Frostfire, but I have tested out a lot of Spellslinger myself as well, and overall I just like Frostfire way more, but Spellslinger does have its place. Maybe you could consider it to be slightly more of a defensive option because you have the longer displace and the barrier talent. And then, you know, even though you are playing it for defensive purposes, you have the more kind of passive damage with Force of the Will, orb damage increase, and then more resets on your orbs. With getting more flurries too, because whenever you get this, where is it? The thing that puts flurry on the target. Was it this? Oh yeah, Splinter Storm applies Winter's Chill. So you get like the random Winter's Chill procs, which enables you to press Ice Lance a couple more times. So it could be really solid when you're in a situation where, you know, you really are under a lot of pressure. And then you could think of Frostfire as just being like more damage and also has some pretty cool like cooldown reset things with it too. So largely a decision is up to you guys. Like I said multiple times already, both are good, but I do think Frostfire does pull a little bit ahead. So that's enough of the hero talents. Let's move on now to whatever's next, which will be how Frostmage actually works. So let's get on to that. Okay, so like I said, when we were covering some of the talents that we would talk about later, we'll go over a little bit about how Frostmage does damage now. So the primary talent that we're looking at here is Shatter. This is going to multiply the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by 1.5 and adds an additional 50% crit chance. So it'll take your crit value that you have here, 6%, and it'll multiply it by 1.5, and then on top of that you have a 50% chance. So it comes out to be, I don't know the exact math, but it's somewhere above 60% probably. So yeah, you have about a 60% chance ish to crit whenever you deal damage to a target that is frozen. Now, you have a couple different ways to freeze targets. You have a lot of ways to freeze targets. We'll talk about that now. The first one is Fingers of Frost. So just to read Fingers of Frost here on the baseline tooltip, and then I'll talk about it a little bit. Frostbolt has a 15% chance, and Frozen Orb has a 10% chance to generate a charge of Fingers of Frost. Fingers of Frost causes the next Ice Lance to deal damage as if the target were frozen. So that'll be these procs that we see here. So whenever you throw those in, they'll have a lot higher chance to crit. And that'll be your main way of doing damage, is sending in these instant Ice Lance procs. The other way to do it is to use Flurry. Flurry unleashes a flurry of ice, striking the target 3 times for a certain amount of frost damage. Each hit will reduce the target's movement speed for a short amount of time, and it has a 25% chance to proc Glacial Assault, which is that 6% damage modifier. Not really. Don't pay attention to that. Don't get overwhelmed by that. And it applies Winner's Chill to the target. Winner's Chill is a debuff that causes the target to take damage from your spells as if they were frozen. So you can see here, when I throw a Flurry, it'll leave this debuff, Winner's Chill. You can just lance 2 times into that, and it's basically the same thing as if you had an Ice Lance proc. So that's 2 different ways so far. So we have a Fingers proc right here. We can send those in. Now that we don't have any, we use Flurry, and then we send our Ice Lances into that. Now, I'll talk a little bit, because you guys saw that as I threw that Flurry, I generated a Fingers of Frost proc. So you guys might be thinking now, if you have a Fingers of Frost proc, like if you generate one as you Flurry, what do? Because you're essentially overlapping here, right? You're sending a lance into that Winner's Chill. And while, yes, that is not the greatest thing to do, it will happen by accident sometimes. And there is a small bonus that you'll get for doing that from Wintertide. Fingers of Frost empowered Ice Lances deal 20% increased damage to frozen targets. So you might be wondering why that doesn't get the benefit from the normal Fingers of Frost, because it's supposed to do damage as if the target were frozen. But this is saying is if you have Fingers of Frost and you deal damage to a frozen target, then you get that modifier. So anytime you do damage into a root or something like that, and you have an Ice Lance proc, you get a 20% increased damage modifier on it. Now there's a way to further increase your damage as well of these Ice Lance procs through overlapping certain freeze abilities, and that will come through Sub-Zero, which your frost spells will deal 10% more damage to targets that are rooted and frozen. So when you have a root on a target, that will count as rooted and frozen. Roots count as the target both being rooted and frozen. So if you throw that Ice Lance into it, into like these frostbites, then that will count. Another way you can do it is through Ice Nova. So if I were to Ice Nova and throw my Ice Lance, that would get the 20% from Wintertide and the 10% from Sub-Zero. So that's a way that you can get more burst out of your Ice Lances. And the reason I'm telling you this is not only to understand how the talents work, but to understand that sometimes overlapping those procs is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just more burst. So there's different ways to do damage. You could go for the more sustain, which is to separate them, or you could go for the more burst. Most of the time you want to try to keep the flurries and the Fingers of Frost procs separate, but it will happen sometimes. So now we'll talk about the basic rotation. We've already talked about how Frost Mage does damage by attacking frozen targets. Now we want to talk a little bit about the rotation. I'll go ahead and preface here by saying that there is no rotation in PvP, right? Because everything is going to be dictated by where certain players are moving. Maybe someone moves out of your line of sight, or maybe someone pops a defensive cooldown, maybe someone interrupts you, stuns you, crowd controls you, or they use some, you guys get what I'm trying to say here, right? Like, there is no like A to Z, pull this rotation off every single time. Now, that being said, there is also a most efficient way to do damage. So real quick, we'll watch something, and that will be sort of the basic damage rotation that you should be striving for, but we'll go over why you're doing it in that order so that if interrupts and stuff are present, you still know and understand how to do damage efficiently, so you can pick up right where you left off when you leave that crowd control. So let's get into that real quick. Okay, so you guys saw the rotation. Let's break it down a little bit now. So we're going to explain why we do things in a certain order. So Ring of Fire is a cast that is always good to fish for before you start bursting targets. You can basically think of certain spells as dots, Ring of Fire being one of them, Orb being another one, and Blizzard being your other dot. And same with Frost Bomb. So the best way you can do a damage rotation, if you think about it, is like the damage rotation from this, where you like do your burst, flurry into lance, will be a lot higher if you have all of these dots ticking first, right? Like now if I flurry lance, it's a lot more damage because of all of these dots that are kind of working in the background, right? So you can see here we're setting up our damage rotation efficiently here. Here, let me disable some of these things so we're not overlapping on overlays. So one sec. There we go. So yeah, the first thing we're going for here, we're fishing for a Ring of Fire. You'll notice I haven't veins yet. There's something I haven't told you guys with the pet, but whenever you summon your pet, you'll get this ability called Water Jet that automatically starts going on the target, and that will generate you Brain Freeze. So with that in mind, we'll talk about that here in a sec. But yeah, we're getting the dots up on the target. We start with a Ring of Fire. We start with a Frost Bomb, so we have 2 of our dots applied. Then we Orb to get another dot out there, and we can build up our Bone Chillings. And we get our increased Ice Lance damage proc here from Permafrost. We'll go ahead and get the Blizzard down or sorry, no Blizzard right now. Maybe should have though. But that's an optional global. If people aren't stacking and this is a single target scenario like it is here, it wouldn't be good. But if you were attacking, like, we'll do that same rotation, but right here, maybe you would want to fit in a Blizzard right there before you start sending the rest of it in. Because that's just another dot, right? But instead, I didn't go for that. I went for the Flurry, and then you can see I do that Flurry first. I want to get one on cooldown. Then I'll go ahead and I'll pop Icy Veins. I'll get another dot going here with Comet Storm. So just to break down a little bit about why we're doing it in this order. So like I said, we Ring of Fire, we Frost Bomb. That's 2 dots. We want to make sure we shatter this Frost Bomb here in a couple of seconds. So what we do is we put Flurry on the target. So what Flurry is going to do is it's going to ensure that every tick of the orb is going to be critting or have that increased chance. Then when we use our Comet Storm, the way it works on some abilities, when you Flurry, is direct damage will consume the stacks, right? You see that 2 stack right there? If I Lance, it goes down to 1, 0. However, if I Flurry and I Orb into it, all those orb ticks are going to get the value out of it, and if I Comet into it, it doesn't consume it as well, right? And we get the increased, we get that access if the target were frozen portion applying to it. So we Flurry, we pop our Veins, so we can get that increased damage from our pet, giving us frigid empowerment. Whenever our pet does damage, we get that damage modifier here, which will stack up instantly. So we want to have that for when our burst comes out. So that's why we veins first, then we pull out the comet. We still have that flurry debuff on the target, so that's going to ensure that all of those ticks are critting. And then since we consume the flurry with this frostfire bolt that we got from popping veins, what we do is we use the pet nova, because the pet nova will give us sub-zero value. And keep in mind, roots are the most amount of damage that you can do in a shatter, because you get the bonus from sub-zero in that. So the comet storm is getting 10% increased damage. That frostfire bolt got 10% increased damage because we threw it into a pet nova. So we veins, we comet, we frostfire bolt, pet nova, so that the comet and the meteor are all getting that sub-zero value. The frostfire bolt's getting that sub-zero value, and then the frost bomb is getting the sub-zero value. So you want to time all of that to where it all ticks at the same exact second. I don't have a pet nova, so I'll use ice nova in this example, but see ice nova right there, kind of the similar idea. And now we're just going to go into our consistent portion of the burst here, which is ice lance, flurry, ice lance, just because we want to get that winter's chill up on the target so we can throw lance even though we don't have 2 procs. We consume those 2, we run out, so we flurry again. We get a frostfire bolt proc from just random, so we send that in. We maybe could have waited to send that frostfire bolt proc in because our severe temperatures buff wasn't stacked high enough yet. So you can see I'm not tracking anything yet, still learning here myself. And then we're throwing in ice lance procs as we get them. Once we run out, we throw another flurry. We'll go ahead and blizzard here because we need to get to our next orb, and we're starting to run out of ice lances, so we need to start fishing for, we need to start playing for the future, right? So I get a blizzard, I consume those 2 winter's chills with ice lance. I have a frost bomb back, so I'll go ahead and load that up. Then I'll put my flurry right on the target, right after that. Then I'll go for 1 ice lance, but keep in mind I don't want to consume this second one because I kind of want to get that winter's chill to stay on the target when my frost bomb is about to expire. So instead I use, actually no, I do the 2 because I know I have my ring of fire and I can just shatter this frost bomb with ice nova to get the biggest amount of damage. So once that ring of fire cast, once that ring of fire cast is over, I use ice nova as that is about to expire, and then you could even lance into that as well because ice nova doesn't break on damage. So I'll show you what I mean here. So this is what I did. I frost bombed, then I ring of fire, then I ice nova'd, and then you can throw a lance into that as well. But instead I go for a shifting power here because I want to reset all of my cooldowns. And then as soon as they're off cooldown now, I go back for the frost bomb, into the flurry, into the comet, into the lance, into the lance, into the ice nova, into the flurry, into the lance. And keep in mind that ice nova was for that frost bomb that was just about to expire. So boom, got sub-zero value on that. Now we're just back to flurry, lance, lance. I get my ring of fire back. I orb, I blizzard, I lance, I flurry, I lance, and then I get my blizzard back with that ice collar. So yeah, that's essentially how you want to do damage. Now keep in mind, let's say one example here, you throw out all of your dots, you veins, you get the comet, the pet nova, the frost firebolt, the lance, and then like right here you get CC'd. You know, that's on that. This is the part where it's like, okay, I get stunned, I trinket out of this now, and it's like you have to look at what you have available and figure out what is the best course of doing damage. So I have an ice lance proc with 1 flurry charge, so I'll get out of the stun and I'll go back to ice lancing, and then, you know, then from here, because I have no fingers procs, well, I'll look down here and see I have 2 flurries and a frostfire, but I want to shatter that frostfire, so I'll send the flurry first, then I'll send my frostfire proc. So you can kind of see, like, if you understand how the damage actually works on a pure modifier scale, then you'll understand a lot more of how to do damage on the fly when interrupts and stuff are going on. And you'll see there's basically no casting in this rotation. So now we have that basic rotation done there. That was the burst, the sustain, and everything like that. There will be one more scenario here where, let's say you don't have Icy Veins. Icy Veins is on cooldown. Let's actually just go ahead and do like a little baby rotation here and kind of exhaust all of our options, so I can show you guys what to do whenever you're in a situation where you have no more buttons. So you're just doing your rotation. This is pretty much the exact same rotation except without those like pre-dots. So 5 severe temperatures. I'll just go for a burst. Frost bomb's about to expire. Ice Nova. I gotta use our first shifting power here because we have no more options. Get the dots back up. Flurry into Comet. Consume one of the Winter's Chill. Use the other one on the Frostfire. Throw the Lance. Throw the Flurries into the Lance, We'll flurry again into Lance. And then now we're at this point where, let's assume we didn't have Orb there because people weren't stacking. So let's just kind of throw these away. So at this point in time, you just want to try to do little miniature versions of that, right? So like Frost Bomb into Ring of Fire, into Flurry, into Comet, into Frostfire Bolt, into Double Lance, into Ice Nova on that Frost Bomb. And then right here, Flurry into Lance, Okay, well, I'm about to run out of Flurries. So is there anything I can like min-max, since this is kind of like my last rotation? Well, I have 4 severe temperatures, so I'll Frostfire with a Flurry there, and then I'll use it. Okay, that little bit of time brought me to a Ring of Fire. Now the only thing I really have here is Comet, so I'll just Comet Ice Nova. So I have to do like a little mini combo there. Now I have Frost Bomb back, so I'll get that on cooldown real quick before I shift. That'll give me my Flurry, which will allow me to proc that. Now I can get another Ring of Fire, and then you can see I'm back to my Orb and my Veins. So when you're in that sustain period, you're just trying to find little versions of these combos that you're doing. So let's go ahead and get the Blizzard down. I'm getting a lot of Ice Lance procs here. I'll Flurry. Oh crap, I'm out of Flurries. Let's assume I don't have Veins either. Okay, let me do a little go here. I'll Frost Bomb, and then I'll do Frostfire Bolt into Ice Nova. And then, okay, I have my Comet, so I can use that and just proc it with Frost Nova. Or get the Shatter with Frost Nova. Then I can Ring of Fire. I'll Blizzard here to get my last little couple seconds of that off. And then you go from there. You just try to find little combos. And if you can't do any of those, like if you have literally no options, then that's your time to sort of maybe look at something else in the game. Like maybe is there something I can sheep? Or is there some buffs I can spell steal? Or maybe that's a point in the game where you want to change your positioning to get closer to the healer. Maybe you can go for like a DB sheep and then like retreat. And that time, that those couple of globals that you're not spending on damage, you can set up for doing damage, right? So if you go for a DB sheep for that in that example, now whenever you do your damage, the target's in a sheep, and look at that, all your cooldowns are back. So I hope that sort of shed some light on like the basics of how Frost works. Now we'll go over a little bit of the other rotation here if you are using, let's say, Glacial and Ray, because it does change a little bit. So I've actually never had like all these abilities on my bars at once. So let's see if we can make something work here. A little bit messy, but so with this, it does change a little bit. You can think of just Ray of Frost is actually, first of all, let's do a rotation, then we'll talk about it. Okay, so we have this rotation here now. So we start with Ring of Fire. Again, this like rotation is pretty much the same, except so like right now you can see we're getting all of our dots out, get the flurry out, then we pop our veins, then we send the Comet Ice Nova so we can get that Wintertide, or sorry, Sub-Zero value. Then we send the Ray here instead, because the Ray is just going to be a lot of burst while this entire sequence of burst is going on. So then right after that, with the remaining stacks of our Winter's Chill that we haven't even consumed any of yet, we can send our Frostfire Bolt into that, and that will get value out of Wintertide because, or sorry, no it won't. So this will yeah, this will shatter the Frostfire Bolt into that flurry. Then that last little charge there you can get in with that one little Ice Lance proc. Then from here the rotation is basically the same as before. So flurry, we have our Frostfire, so we'll go ahead and send that. We'll send our Lances in right now. We get that Blizzard down right before the instant part of it went away. You can see I kind of make a little bit of a mistake here, I think. Let's see. Because my excess fire goes out. So when that Living Bomb explodes, I will gain another flurry charge. And this is going to segue into something that's actually very important, I think, is that a large part of doing your damage on Frost, if you find yourself without flurry charges a lot, it's likely because you're overlapping them. Like you can only hold up to 2 flurry charges at once. You can see in this rotation right here, I'm actually glad I made this mistake, is this Living Bomb will explode and it gave me another flurry there, but I didn't get value out of it because I had 2 already. So that's something you want to think about in your gameplay, is you don't want to be sitting on 2 flurry charges whenever you know that you have a way to generate another one. And then at this point, we'll go in for our Glacial Spike here in a second because we're at 5 icicles. So I send in the Glacial and I want to shatter this. So I'll send a flurry right after it. And this will work. The Glacial will shatter. It did not crit because whenever you shatter, it's not a 100% chance. It's only like around 60. And then you can see from there, I'll just use my instant Frostfire Bolt prompt that I have. And it's basically the same thing. So we'll go ahead and get we have a somewhat stacked severe temperature buff here, but we'll send a hard casted Frostfire into a flurry, into a Comet, into a Glacial Spike, and the bomb will crit due to the flurry. The Glacial will crit due to the flurry, and then we'll send a Lance in with that. Then at this point, we need some way to crit this target now because we have no Fingers of Frost, so we put a flurry on him, Lance, Lance. And from here, it's the same thing, right? We're just resetting, putting dots on the target. We shift a little bit, and then we get more dots on the target with Orb into Blizzard. We get another Frost Bomb on the target. We put the flurry on it so that while we cast the Glacial, it will crit. And then we'll crit the Glacial because of this. Then we send in a Comet. Now, see, this is a mistake because... Why is this a mistake, guys? Watch this Comet Storm here, okay? There's no... See all these ticks not critting? Because we didn't have our flurry on the target before the Comet. So in this rotation, I intentionally put some mistakes in there so that we could showcase the loss of damage on certain abilities and overlapping the flurry procs with the FROSTFIRE. So yeah, basically you guys can see the rotation for that. Just to talk about it a little bit, we'll do like a little bit of a live one for a second. We're sending in all of our damage here. We get the Ray, we're doing it into the Winter's Chill. Now I'm almost at 5 icicles, so I'll press Flurry to get that 5th one, and we'll go into a Glacial Spike. Now we'll finish off the Fingers of Frost procs that we have. Another Frost Bomb. Okay, we're kind of close. We have 5 severe temperatures. We'll fit a Frostbolt cast in there because we need to get to 5 icicles anyways. So we'll just consume all these Winter's Chills, and then we'll just Glacial Spike with an Ice Nova so that we get Wintertide value on it, or sorry, Sub-Zero. Then we can go into another rotation. Like I said, in these downtimes, you're just setting up little miniature rotations, sort of. Since I have the Winter's Chill on the target, I'll just Comet Storm with it, consume the last one with Lance, and then we're almost at 5 here. So we Frostbolt Flurry for those 2 more. We get a Glacial, we send that in, and it's the same thing essentially. So you just have to cast a little bit more. Your downtime isn't so much just Lance, 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 Flurry, Lance, Lance. Like, you're actually fitting in some casted damage. This will be the build I think that we'll be playing if Ice Lance ever does get the nerf that it probably will get pretty soon. So now let's move on to the next portion of the guide, guys, and that will be how to manage our pet. Alright, so when it comes to your pet, a lot of it is passive. There's just 1 or 2 things I wanna share with you guys. So first, it's my Icy Veins macro. So first, I'm gonna kind of throw something out there that we can think about here for a second. When do we get Water Elemental? When do we actually get the Water Elemental? It's whenever we have Icy Veins, right? So activating Icy Veins summons a Water Elemental to your side. So what this essentially allows us to do, this is a kind of a trick here to save it keybind. You can put /cast freeze in your Icy Veins macro, because the only time you'll have a Water Elemental is whenever you Icy Veins. And if you're using Icy Veins, then it's on cooldown. So that bind is free while Veins is on, or sorry, while your Welly is out. So what I use to pet Nova is actually just my Veins bind. So whenever I pop Veins, if I press it again, I get my freeze. So that's how I'm freezing people. And then when it comes to the other ability that you care about, it's Water Jet. So I like to leave this on default, because if your Water Elemental, if your Water Elemental doesn't use this as soon as he's summoned, there's a good chance that you won't get 2 of these. And that Water Jet summons another, or sorry, grants you another charge of Brain Freeze. So I like to leave it on automatic, and then just make sure when you go into your veins you only have 1 flurry charge, and then track that Water Jet so that when you're about to get that second one, you can see that you need to spend a flurry charge if you haven't already. Now, the only other thing with your pet, in my opinion, is to have /pet attack in your Ice Lance macro, so that your Welly will attack whoever you're attacking. And I also like to put that into my Frostbolt macro as well, right here, which will be your Frostfire Bolt macro. Now I have a macro here to make it look like the old Frostfire, which I haven't put on my bars yet. But yeah, so that's pretty much all it comes down to. That's pretty much all you have to think about. There is another thing. You do get the Water Elemental whenever you proc Time Anomaly. So if you get a procced Icy Veins, you do get the Water Elemental. And there are a couple more things that you could have bound. However, I would put this as optional, because Welly is not really like that important of a pet. You basically want him so that you can get that Frigid Empowerment buff, this one here, and so you can get the Pet Nova. But sometimes if you kind of venture off over here and you need to Pet Nova, and your pet is too far from you, you're not going to be able to do it, right? Because he's out of range. So sometimes I like to have this pet move to bound, so that if I am kiting and he's too far, I can move the Pet Nova with me. So I do think that is nice to have bound. I don't think it's super required. It's just, if you're already comfortable with everything and you're looking for minor ways to improve your gameplay, I think having that bound is very, very good. So yeah, that's pretty much all it comes down to with the pet. I think Mage pet is one of the easier ones to manage. I was gonna fish here for a Time Anomaly, but I think it would be very rare if I got a Icy Veins proc, so I probably won't. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to know about the Water Elemental. So the next part of the guide is the utility, defensives, and mobilities section, so we'll go over that here real quick. Okay, so when we talk about mage utility, what are we talking about? So we have a couple different spells, right? We have something like Blast Wave. We have, what the, my comma, something's wrong with my keyboard. Okay, anyways, we'll fix that a little bit later. But Blast Wave, I'll just do this for now. Blast Wave, Frost Nova, we'll go ahead and place Remove Curse there. Spell Steal is another one, I believe. We'll put Ice Nova on there as well. We'll put Dragon's Breath. We'll put Polymorph. And then we can put, what's another utility? Oh, Slow. I really want to make sure I don't miss any here. Maybe we can put Cone of Cold because there is some merit to that ability having some usefulness. I also kind of want to put Fire Blast on there for a reason that I'll explain later. And then maybe Arcane Explosion too, because these aren't DPS buttons. These are, I don't know how utility is necessarily classified, but these abilities have some role in not damaging, but like for example, I'll spoil something, but Arcane Explosion is like getting a rogue out of stealth. That's kind of like a utility thing, right? But Arcane Intellect, I guess. Slowfall, we're not going to talk about. Slowfall has pretty much no use in PvP at all. Counterspell, don't want to, we definitely have to talk about Counterspell. And then maybe Ice Flows, we can talk about that as well. And that should be all, I think. So let's just start going down the line here. So Blast Wave is our first one on the list. So Blast Wave is a cause an explosion around yourself, deals a very small amount of damage to all enemies within 8 yards, and knocks them back and reduces movement speed. So this is the debuff that it leaves on them, the movement speed low. But the cool part about Blast Wave is that if I used it on this guy, Foot Gripper, and I Blast Waved him, he would go like all the way over here. It's like a really, really big knockback. And it's cool when you play Frostfire and you have Elemental Affinity. You... like, Blast Wave has a DR. Like, Knockback has a DR. And it's about 18 seconds to 20 seconds. So you're able to do it a lot. You're able to Blast Wave now with that cooldown. Or sorry, with that modifier. You're able to do it every single time. And you can use Blast Wave in a lot of different ways. For example, knocking people to interrupt casts. If you have 2 melees or 1 melee on you and you're trying to get away, you can use Blast Wave. You can use it offensively to interrupt casts, like I said, like Shimmer, Blast Wave a cast, because Shimmer's off global. Blast Wave people into Ring of Frost. If you have a Ring of Frost on the ground and you missed it, you could Blast Wave them into it. So it's a very cool utility spell that you have. Frost Nova is an 6-second root, so you can just simply root an enemy in place. It does DR with other roots, so Pet Nova and Frostbite. Frostbite is a random chill on the target. Or sorry, a random chill has a 10% chance to proc a root. So like, see, that's a Frostbite. And then if I Nova'd, you can see Frostbite is now fully DR'd. And you see the Nova is like a quarter DR on that guy. So just keep in mind your Nova DRs. And then that's pretty much all there is to say. You can use it for Sub-Zero, so you can also use it for damage. If you have no procs at all and you're trying to shatter something, let's say maybe a Glacial Spike. Let's get to a Glacial Spike here, for example. Let's say you have no flurries, no Ice Nova. You can use it for damage by shimmering with your Glacial on top of someone and spamming Ice Nova as it's casting. That's a way that you can shatter certain spells. So that's like another use for it. But yeah, mainly just used to, it's like an anti-melee tool. Or if you're CCing a healer and you sheep them into sheep, you can Frost Nova off that, which forces them to dispel it. And then once they dispel it, you can Blast Wave them far into Ice Nova. So you can really annoy people with these spells, right? Remove Curse is going to allow you to remove Curse on yourself or any other player. Like I can cast it on this guy. You can see the little swirly. or I can just cast it on myself. You're mainly using this to dispel lots of different curses from other classes, such as Warlock having Agony, the Amplified Curse of Weakness, which stops any spell from critting. There is Hex as well. Hex on your teammate can be dispelled. You can't dispel your own Hex. And then you have another one, the Curse of Exhaustion from Warlock. You have Curse of Tongues from Warlock. You have Havoc, Curse of Havoc from Warlock. So it's really into Lock and Shaman that you're playing this. And there is even a talent change you can make when you don't fight either of those classes. You can take out Remove Curse, and you can go into the increased crit chance, which will make it to where you just simply have 2% more chance to crit, since you already don't need Remove Curse anyways. Spell Steal is a very good button because it will essentially, let me pull up my Discord channel here. I have a nice list of stuff that you can spell steal. If you guys aren't in my Discord, make sure you join it. So what buffs do I look to spell steal? Purgeable buffs are indicated by the white outline shown above. So when you target someone and you see like all these buffs and stuff, the white outlined ones are the ones that are purgeable. And then you can see here a big list of spells that are purgeable and ones that you should be going for sometimes. Keep in mind that Frost Mage only has 5 spell steals before you're completely You can see here it costs 525,000 mana. So I press 1, I'm at 80, 2, I'm at 60, 3, I'm at 40, and then you're on your last one. So I don't sometimes like to use this last one because if you use too many, you sometimes can't use some rotational spells if you're too low. Kind of more of an issue for fire, but just be careful not to like completely yourself as completely yourself. But yeah, just keep in mind you pretty much only have like 5 spell steals and then it's on cooldown for a little bit to wait for your mana to come back. So yeah, look to spell steal some of those beneficial buffs when you have the free globals to do so. Ice Nova you can use as a utility purpose because not like on Frost Mage you want to use it to shatter spells, but sometimes when you're under a lot of pressure and let's say you blast wave a target off you, he leaps back on you and you Nova him, and then the monk uses Tiger's Lust which breaks his Nova, you can immediately Ice Nova him, like just as another way to get away. And while you do that, while he's in that Ice Nova and you're kiting, you can shatter a spell into it as well on Frost. So you can use it as like a root as well. You can cancel some movement options with it, like a druid who is in travel form. If they use wild charge while they're in travel form, you can Ice Nova and it'll, like when they wild charge, they're like, they jump. If you Ice Nova them mid jump, it will stop their jump. However, it doesn't do that for all. Like you can't do it on Heroic Leap, you can't do it on Charge, you can't do it on Feral Leap, you can't do it on, you can do it on Monk Roll and Whirling Dragon Punch. That's one I do know. And Fell Rush too from Demon Hunter. So you can cancel some movement abilities with it too, like mid dash, which is kind of cool. That's kind of why I put it under utility. So Dragon's Breath is another one. Dragon's Breath is a cone-shaped ability. It's kind of about like this general area. You can see like right there. So enemies have to be in this little cone shape I'm making with my mouse. And it will disorient them for 4 seconds. And your purpose with this is primarily to CC people. So if you're getting trained super hard, blah, 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 someone's chasing you, you bring them out of line. So now you're around a pillar where you're lining like the healers dispel. You can DB them into sheep, into polymorph, and then they're stuck there, right? Another case is like if you're getting trained super hard, people are attacking you, I'm dying. You can just DB them for literally 1 second. Because like it will likely break. It breaks to even the smallest amount of damage. Like even if you had a FROSTFIRE dot, which does 2,000 damage. If I DB'd, it would instantly break. But sometimes you can use it as like a 1 global stun to get people off of you, right? Like this Demon Hunter is attacking, like my DB will break instantly, but if I'm here and I'm really snared and I'm just trying to get away, I can DB for like 1 second. You see how it sat for like 1 second? You can kind of use it like that sometimes too, but mainly you can use it as like a way to interrupt casts. You can use it as a way to DB people into sheep, but just make sure they don't have any dots on the target so that it won't break instantly. That's all there is to really say. Polymorph, we just kind of talked about that too. It's a 1.4 second cast with a 30-yard range. Breaks to any damage, so any point of damage you do to a sheep will break. So it has, although it will clear debuffs. So if I have a Frostfire Bolt dot, a Ring of Fire dot, like all these dots, and I sheep, it will clear those. But keep in mind, if there's AoE damage out, like Orb and Blizzard and all that kind of stuff, and I press sheep, it will break instantly. So it's kind of a spell you're not pressing too often right now, but it is still a good spell to press. It's on the Arcane School. So yeah, not bad. And then Polymorph, or sorry, Slow is another one. So a lot of people ask me why we run slow on a Frost Mage when a lot of our abilities already slow. And it's simply put, for one, we'll do a little experiment here. When we take out slow, what are our options? We have Diverted Energy, which is heavily nerfed in PvP. You're never going to take this talent. Mass Polymorph. Guys, come on, really? Mass Polymorph? Tome of Ronin. This one's like pretty small. Rigid Ice. This one, your Frost Nova is almost always going to be DR on Frost Mage from Frostbite, so we don't ever take that. Same thing with Improved Nova. It's always going to be DR. Heal Block is pretty heavily nerfed right now. It's at 25%. Which goes up to 50 on 2 ranks. So we're never going to get value out of that, really. When you play games with a healer, there is the build where you'll take 2 out of warding and go into cryo if you're playing with no healer. But in a healer situation where you have healers, cryo freeze doesn't really get any value. These 2 talents are very bad. They don't do anything. They modify mirror images, which is already a pretty bad spell. Tempest is also nerfed to 1% in PvP. Winter's Protection is okay, but you already have double block, and most games don't last longer than double block. And then Incantation of Swiftness. You use G and Viz for a damage reduction cooldown, so you don't really ever get value out of the movement speed for that either. So having an ability to instantly slow a target with no travel time is very beneficial, because if you're cutting a target and he's moving at full speed, if I want to slow this guy instantly on a Frost Mage, I don't really have a button to do it instantly. You know, I have Flurry, which will leave that snare on the target for 1 second. I have a hard casted Frostfire Bolt, which won't do it either. I have Orb, but it has travel time. So like there's no way to instantly slow people, right? So that's why we spec into slow, because you're able to instantly snare a target, no travel time, spammable. So it's very nice to just have the ability to do that. Some people always comment like, I never even see you press it. It's like, well, yeah, I didn't need it. I was able to slow pretty much all the time, or like there wasn't a situation where I needed to use it. It's just nice to have the ability to do that when you need to. That's all. So that's that. Now we have Cone of Cold. Cone of Cold is the slowest slow that you actually have in your kit. It's a 70% snare. You don't ever really press this other than maybe if you are on 2 different, like if 2 targets are directly on top of you and they're killing you very hard and you're about to shimmer away. I always say that you should pair a cast with your shimmer. So instead of just turning around and shimmering away here, you could Cone of Cold turn around and shimmer away, because that will leave a nasty snare on the target after you get distance on them. And then that gives you time to potentially Orb or Ice Nova them to keep them in that same position over there, which gives you a lot of time away from the target, which is something you'll desperately need to do often as Mage, because you'll get trained. So it's got a place. Fire Blast is a ability that you mainly use to kill Shaman totems or to snipe Warrior Reflect off of. So like Fire Blast does very small damage, like 42,000. Like not even Ice Lance is doing crazy damage. Like Fire Blast does no damage at all. You don't think of it as a rotational spell. It's just to kill the grounding totems, the totems of Wrath, snipe Warrior Spell Reflect, But keep in mind, it doesn't kill every totem. Like, it won't kill the higher HP totems. Let's say Observer from Warlock, Healing Streams, Healing Tides, Earth Grabs, things like that. But it will kill Grounding Totem and Sky Fury Totem, which are pretty much the two totems you're using to Fire Blast 4. And again, Warrior Reflect. Now we have Arcane Explosion. This is sort of just like an AoE ability that you have. Doesn't do any damage pretty much at all. Does a little bit, but like hardly any, right? What is that, like 29,000? You're mainly just using this at times to try to get people out of stealth. Like if you're sitting here and then you see a rogue pop up here for a second, you can just throw an Arcane Explosion. Arcane Intellect is your buff, gives you 3% intellect. Sometimes when it falls off, you can have an add-on that tells you that it's fallen off. You can apply it again. Something you'll press in the starting room. Counterspell. So counterspell is important because this is your interrupt, and interrupts in WoW are very, very important. You can use them to kick healers on healing schools. You can use them to kick other DPS on their damaging schools. You can use it to cast, meaning like, let's say the mage has his counterspell available and is casting an arcane school. You can kick Poly, or yeah, like let's say he's casting Poly, which is on the arcane school, and you counterspell the arcane school. Now he can't use his arcane school, which includes counterspell, so you can use it to get your own cast off. There's a lot of different variety that you can play with it. I recommend having 1, 2, 3 counterspells, so arena, like cast at arena 2, at arena 3, and at arena 1, so that when you have your arena targets here with the cast bars set up this way, you can simply just look at the cast bar and be like, okay, arena 1, 2, 3, and then you can CS those respectively. So I think that's better than having it like on your target, because let's say you're targeting arena 1 here, and this is arena 2, and this is arena 3, and you have this guy on your focus who is arena 2. If you're using a standard target focus kick, then what if this third guy starts casting something that you want to interrupt? You have to either quickly target him or quickly focus him to interrupt it. So having the 1, 2, 3 CS is going to be very beneficial there. All my macros will be in the description as well, or in the comments. I have a spin with all of those. And then Ice Flows is the last one. That's whenever you spec out of Shimmer, which remember, we're only pretty much doing that into Sub-Rogue and into Feral Druids at times. So this ability is pretty cool. I'll even let you guys in on a little secret to min-max if you want. But it makes your next mage spell with a cast time shorter than 10 seconds castable while moving, unaffected by GCD, and castable while moving. So let's say you want a shifting power and you're like right here, but there's someone who can interrupt you. You can use Ice Flows, shifting, and then move out of line. So this is how you're casting while moving. So you can do really cool things with this, like if someone has a counter spell, you cast, you walk around the corner and peek right out before it's about to go, right before it's about to go off. Let's say you have a Glacial Spike here, and you can cast that, move, come back out, boom, and then you can just do like, you can cast any spell that you want while you're moving. So it kind of makes, the reason why they put this on normal blink over Shimmer is because playing normal blink makes it very hard to get cast off because you aren't able to shimmer with them. So this helps you a little bit be able to cast some spells. However, it's still very hard because you have no way to, like if melees are on you, if I wanted to get a Ring of Fire off as Shimmer, all I would have to do is cast it, blink while I'm casting it, and I'm over here. But if I start casting Ring of Fire and use Ice Flows, I'm still like within interrupt range, and I don't suddenly blink out of line. So it's still going to be very difficult. That's why I recommend that you guys don't play it, except for into those 2 classes that I named. Now I'm going to show you guys the little trick here on Ice Flows. It's actually how to get 5 charges on it. So there's like, I don't know if it's, I think it's got to just be intended at this point. I don't think it's a bug anymore. But this is something that's very min-max, by the way. If you guys are new players, please don't attempt to like implement this. This is just for the advanced players who are maybe looking for the little tips in this video. But if you use, let's look at our cast bar here, okay? So let's use this little line right here and say that's like 90% of the way through the cast. if you're casting a spell and you have ice flows up and it gets to that 90% part and you use another one, it will duplicate it. So watch this. Let's start over. Let's start over at 3 charges and we'll count how many spells we cast in total. So you guys can see that it's actually 5. We'll wait for this charge here. We'll just do it with Frostbolt. So we activate 1 charge. Then when it gets to that 90%, I will press it another one. And you can see it didn't consume. Whoa. Did they fix that? Hold on. Let me try that again. Oh, they might have fixed that, guys. Let me try a different spell here. Let me try a different spell. Let me try just normal Frostbolt. Maybe there's something with Frostfire Bolt that makes it not work anymore. Okay. Now let's see. This would be crazy if they actually fixed it. So we have 2 charges. We use one at 90%. Then we use another one. And we use it at 90%. Yeah, it's something with Frostfire Bolt. And then you can see here, we've already used 2 charges of flows. But we have 3 stacks. So we've casted a total of 5 or 6 spells at this point. There's something bugged with Frostfire Bolt, which makes it not work. But essentially, to say it again, whenever you cast a spell, if you use another Ice Flows charge near the end, it won't actually consume it. So you can see, like, I used it late into the cast and then moved with it, but it didn't consume it. And you can do that with other charges as well, like I just showed you guys. So that's like a little tip you can do with flows. Now, let's move on to how to use defensives. Yo, alright guys, I'm sorry, I forgot one spell here, Shifting Power. Shifting Power is a very important cooldown. Draw power from within, deals damage, arcane damage, it's on the arcane school, over 3.2 seconds to enemies within 18 yards. While channeling, your mage abilities, your mage ability cooldowns are reduced by 12 seconds over 3.2 seconds. So what's important with this ability is to have as many things on cooldown as possible. So let me just do like a quick rotation and get as many things as I can on cooldown. Get my blink, get my shimmer, my barrier, even a block, CS, blink, DB, wall, displace. So like all these things are on cooldown, right? Shifting Power will reduce the cooldown of every single one of these spells. So you can get a lot of value out of this. You can do things like counterspell into shifting into your counterspell will have like 6 or 8 seconds left on cooldown at that point with quick witted. So you want to be looking at that before you shifting. So there's obviously a couple different types of shiftings that you can do. There's a Shifting Power that's revolved around getting your damage back, like maybe your veins and your all this stuff is on cooldown and you're really looking to do a lot of damage, but you don't have any cooldowns, so you go for shifting. That's fine, but there's no point to not, for example, in this scenario, like let's say I have shifting coming up here in a second and I want to get to my next Frostbomb or Ring of Fire or something like that. There's no point to not take the 1 global, and you might as well just get your barrier on cooldown, right? Like right before you shift, because now whenever you shift, you just get extra value out of certain spells like that. Like now I just have a barrier and I almost have a barrier back. So with shifting, you want to be thinking about that. I think like the most important ones are like Ring of Fire, CS, and barrier, like things that you could throw out right before you're about to shift. Like if you want to shift, there's no, and someone's casting something, you're like, okay, I can just kick that anyways because I'll be able to shift and just get another one back anyways. So I think Shifting Power is a really cool ability, has a lot of potential with it, so make sure you're getting value out of that as much as you can. Okay, so now we have our defensives. So the defensives that we have on Mage, we have quite a bit. So we'll go ahead and just start listing them out here. We have our biggest defensive, obviously, being Ice Block. We have Cold Snap. Cold Snap. Someone keeps whispering me. And then we have Greater Invisibility, which is our 60% wall. And we have Alter Time as well. Alter Time is probably our next biggest one there. Then we have displacement is another one. Even though that is mobility, I am gonna put it probably under here twice because defensive, it has some it has a nice heal attached to that. We have ice barrier, mass barrier, and then probably our weakest defensives, but still a decent one to put on the list here is mirror images. And let's see, do we have any others? Not really, right? Nope. Yeah, I won't put like conjure refreshment. Maybe conjure refreshment should have been under utility, but anyways, yeah, we'll just go ahead and say that's all of our defensives. I'm pretty sure that is, yeah. Maybe we could put blink, but that'll be under mobility anyways. So ice block is our biggest defensive that we have, encased in a block of ice, protecting you from all attacks and damage for 10 seconds. But during that time, you cannot attack, move, or cast spells. It gives you hypothermia, which prevents you from re-blocking. So block is a spell that you want to use when you get either pretty low, or whenever your healer is in CC and has no outs, or you are mispositioned to a place where the healer can't heal you very easily and you're sort of on your own and you see a lot of damage is coming, you can block and you can avoid all that damage. So the best time, there's like two types of blocks. I like to always say there's a low block and there's a value block. So I want to paint a picture here. We'll take this demon hunter. He's going crazy. He's bursting on me hard. He's going crazy. And then we have our raid frames, which we see our own party members on. We can't do it here, but yeah, so we track our raid frames. We're in a party, we see our healers in like a full fear, and we have Omni CD as well, and we see he has no trinket. If there is like this much burst coming out, like this guy's popping off, the Ellie Shaman is destroying us as well, there's no point to wait for you to get low to block, right? Like, you know, your healer is in a long CC chain and you need to be able to live through that CC chain, and you don't have any of your other defensives like altar or wall, or maybe the damage is coming out so fast that you don't have time to do all that, or maybe you're stunned. Then there's just good value, so I call it a value block, and just blocking high. Like I probably wouldn't do it at 100%, because if you had that much health to work with, you could maybe get away with getting out of the stun and walling, or if you had it. But if you really didn't have any of those other defensives and you were getting low, like 80%, that would be fine to block. And then there's like a different type of block where you block at a low amount of HP. And those blocks are always good, obviously, because if you're about to die, you need to block. And that leads us into our next ability, Cold Snap, which is going to reset the cooldown of Barrier, Nova, Cone, Ice Cold, which is just this block replacement talent, don't worry about that, and Ice Block. So something that's important with Cold Snap is to not use it while you're in block if you have a barrier. You always want to come out of the block first, barrier, and then Cold Snap, because you'll get both of them back. So you always want to do that as soon as you're done blocking, because you want to get it on cooldown. So just make sure that you always barrier before you snap, so you get that extra barrier. Because if this one gets broken, then boom, look at that. You have another one. So Cold Snap, how you use that. Greater Invis is, like I said, it's not an invisibility. You can use it like that very rarely, but it's mainly for this damage taken is reduced by 60%. So if you're taking a lot of damage, you can pop this ability, and then for 3 seconds, you'll have 60% damage reduction. So that's a very strong ability. It's only a 2-minute cooldown. Can be reduced by shifting power as well. Next we have Alter Time. This is a very good ability. So alter the fabric of time, returning you to your current location and health when cast a second time, or after 10 seconds. So let's say you're at 100% HP, right? Your healer gets put into some sort of crowd control, and you alter time. Keep in mind, this is a purgeable buff, so you need to take measure to avoid classes that have purges, like priests, hunters, warlock if they have a pet, shamans, evoker, fire breath is another one that purges. Obviously you guys know all the different purges and stuff. If you don't, that was a fair list of some. There's probably some more that I'm forgetting about off the top of my head, but One thing you need to do with this spell is make sure that it doesn't get purged, right? And you want to use it at a high amount of HP. So there's two different types of altars. There's a health altar, which is the one you'll primarily be using, and then there's a mobility altar. So we'll talk about the health altar first. I'm at 100% HP. I alter, and now I need to get out of line because like people are gonna be trying to purge this like crazy. So I need to like use a mobility option to kind of hide. And then after it expires or you press it a second time, it'll take you back to your original health and location. So you want to use this, like I said, at a high amount of HP because you want to be able to like tank some damage when you have it up, right? Like this guy here, for example, you can see, I don't know if he does damage to me or whatever, but doesn't look like it. Maybe this guy does. Yeah, so this guy does damage. He put me down to 50% HP. So this will be an example of an altar that you would want to cancel. This is not the mobility altar, but let me heal up here. So I'll alter, and then let's say your healer heals you. Now you can see from this altar weak aura that it's a negative altar. So I'm at 93%, but I press it at 65. So if I alter back now, I just go back to 65%. Now, keep in mind, having to do this is very bad because you lose out on the Master of Time value. Alter time resets the cooldown of Blink and Shimmer when you return. So that's why I really want to emphasize that canceling your altar is something that you really don't want to do because it will put you behind on shimmer charges. Alter time is how you sort of never run out of shimmers as long as you're using them efficiently. And that's why whenever you alter low, it's almost better to just use it as a mobility altar. So let's say I'm low, right? Let's have them do a little bit. Okay, I'm at 9%, right? If you there's no value in altering for HP at this amount of HP, right? But let's say you have no blocks, you're about to die. You can still use alter for something like a triple shimmer. You can alter once, double click it, get your shimmer back, and then alter 2 more times. So that would be the case where you use alter time as a mobility option by simply using alter to proc Master of Time to reset another shimmer. That's kind of the 2 types of altars there. You'll need a cancel alter macro here. I put it right here on Alt A. So cancel aura alter time. You can have the show tooltip as whatever you want. I just have it as my barrier because it looks cool when it's like Shift A and Alt A being right next to each other. But all of that bind simply does is cancel my altar. If it's a negative one, I can see that by my weak aura, which makes it red in the middle. Sometimes if the health deficit is not too low, like let's say I alter at 60%, I maybe go down a little bit and then I go up a little bit and it's maybe I'm at like 68% or 70%. I don't mind taking 70% damage at that point, or sorry, 7% of my HP just to get my shimmer back. You only want to cancel it when it's like a huge deficit, because you kind of have to measure the value of like, okay, taking 10% of my HP for one of my shimmers, that's like, I'm okay with that. And also something to note is that if you have alter up and you have 2 shimmers, you sort of have a free one to work with because you'll be able to alter back and get one anyways. That's why I always say whenever you alter, you should just use a shimmer to line purges, because you want to get one on cooldown anyways, so that when you alter back, it goes back to 2. So, yep, it's a good ability there. And then we have displacement. Displacement is this ability that is grayed out. You can't use it until you blink. So you blink once, and then you can see I leave a little beacon. I have a little displacement beacon buff there as well, able to teleport back to where it just last blinked from. So you can use this in a really cool way too. You can just keep in mind it does have a range, so like I'll leave my beacon here and then I'll go down. You can see once I get to about here, it grays out again, but you can use it there and displace back to where you last blinked. So it's a very cool high skill cap ability. If you're playing Spellslinger, you can get some modifiers on it, like it has a 50% longer duration and the 25% longer range. Also, displacement has a heal effect, so it'll heal you for 645,000 amount of HP. I think at this point we are going to combine the mobility section, because we just talked a lot about mobility. So we'll just keep going down the list here and then eventually include the mobility section with that as well. Because a lot of your defensives on Mage, this is actually a great segue into a discussion, is a lot of the way that you're living on a Mage is through your mobility. You're a cloth class with not a bunch of armor, and you don't really have too much inherent damage reduction besides your wall. You're a very squishy class, so a lot of your defensive capabilities are actually coming through your mobility and staying away from targets. So when two melees connect on you at first and you're at 100% HP, boom, two melees are on me, I have a pretty high amount of health, I'll drop my altar, I blink away, they use charge and whirling dragon punch, okay, I'll tank some damage here, let them do a little bit, altar back, now I'm back over here, the warrior uses heroic leap and the monk uses roll. At this point, I use another shimmer to get away. Now the warrior uses charge, or the rogue uses step. As soon as they're on me, you don't want to tank any damage here. You want to just displace instantly. Like you don't want to be tanking damage on Mage. You just want to keep using your mobility to out mobility other people. So now the rogue uses another step and the warrior uses another charge, because melees have infinite amounts of those, right? Now you're over here, they use another one. Instead of using your last shimmer here, maybe you look at using one of your other options like Blast Wave or Nova or Cone of Cold Shimmer. And then now that you're out of shimmers again, you want to alter, tank some damage here. Okay, no more mobility, alter back. Now I have my 2 shimmer charges back. I'll use an Ice Nova when I create distance, so that they're rooted there for a second. And eventually people will just give up trying to chase you if you're trading all these mobility options very well like that, and people can't really catch you. That's like the idea that you want to have on a Mage when it comes to living. And you have the tools to out mobility pretty much every class. So if you're not able to, then it's simply it comes down to how you're using those options. If you guys need help with that in the future, if you try it out for your own and you can't seem to get the hang of it, hit me up for coaching in my Discord. I have a section here called Egg Coaching, where it goes over pretty much all the services that I offer. I can help you improve drastically in the game. Like, hopefully this guide is showing you a little bit of free value from it. Now we'll continue down the list here. We have Ice Barrier. It's simply just a barrier that absorbs a flat amount of damage. You get a 25% effectiveness Blazing Barrier when you use Imbued Warding on the FROSTFIRE tree. Another modifier for that is from Reactive Barrier from SPELLSLINGER. Whenever you get below 50, it'll absorb 50% more. The effect of Ice Barrier simply slows attackers, and the effect of Blazing Barrier does like a little Thorns effect. It's very, very minuscule amount of damage to targets that attack you. And then that leads us into Mass Barrier. One more thing to say about Barrier is Energize Barriers. Casting your barrier removes all snares. So I know you guys can relate when you're fighting a bunch of classes like melees and stuff, and your character is moving at this speed. Something you want to think about is the fact that whenever you use barrier or mass barrier, it will remove the snare on you, so you can go back to moving at full speed again. So you want to use your barrier in 2 different ways. You want to use it for absorb, but you also kind of want to wait till you get snared a little bit. Like using a barrier when you're at full movement speed, like let's say a DK is on you and you blast wave him off you and your health is at like 80% and he grips you in and chains you. Like you wouldn't want to barrier over here. You kind of want to wait for the chains of ice to come out, right? And then you can barrier, save your HP, and you get 2 for 1 value because you're also dispelling your own chains of ice, for example. So that's that. Now we have mirror images. So mirror images is, this mob over here is actually a great way to explain mirror images. So we'll pop mirror images. It creates 3 copies of you nearby for 40 seconds, which casts spells and attacks your enemy. While your images are active, damage taken is reduced by 20%. Taking direct damage will cause one of them to dissipate. So don't think of this ability as anything else other than simply two things: a slow and a damage reduction while they exist. So the best way to use this is there's two different ways. When melees are on you, you use it as a 20% wall. So like if you're getting attacked, I'll just use it the other way first. So this is the way to use it kind of into casters. So you want this 20% wall to exist for a while. So you want to not take direct damage. So you can, if you have dots on you and you pop this, your images will stay for quite a bit. And they will attack the target here in a sec. You can see they cast frost bolts. So it leaves a nice snare on the target. This guy can't be snared, I think. And then you'll see when I take direct damage, this is like into melees, you'll see one of them will disappear. So I got attacked one time, one disappeared. I got attacked 2 times, I'm gonna die. The other one will disappear. So they don't stay out very long. So it's not the best defensive cooldown. It's like a very minor one. You can kind of just throw it out willy-nilly. It's like I said, it's not gonna, the longest it'll ever last is 3 seconds. So don't think of it like as a super major cooldown. It's very, very minor. But if you're using it at a time where you're not taking damage, you'll get that 20% wall for like all these dots and stuff on you, because it needs to be direct damage. So if you have a full row of dots and you're behind a pillar, popping this is a very good time to do it, because you'll get 20% damage reduction. Also, it'll keep snaring the target. That's a very good way to use it, is as a way to consistently snare people. If you're kiting them like crazy and they can't touch you, then you don't even need to slow them, because the mirrors will do it for you. But also just for the 20% wall when you're getting attacked by melees. And now we'll go into mobility, which, like we said, this will be the same section as defensives. We're combining these two. So if you're only watching this for the mobility, you need to go back and watch the defensive section too, because we talk a lot about how to use your mobility. The only thing I didn't really discuss when it comes to mobility is shimmer and how to get value out of that by itself. So shimmer, you can cast while you can use it while casting, is what I was trying to say there. So one example is Ring of Fire, shimmer, and the cast will continue to go off. Another one is like Shifting Power, shimmer. So you need to use this since it's off global cooldown and you can cast it while moving. You need to combine a spell with it almost always. So there's no point in, like, for example, if I alter and then shimmer, I haven't used a global yet. Like, my global cooldown has been off this whole time. So you need to combine spells with shimmer. Like, if you're kiting, for example, and 2 melees are on you, instead of just looking away and shimmering, like, use a cone so you're on GCD at least. Or shimmer and do damage with it. Like, start a cast before you're doing it. Like, if you're taking a lot of damage, maybe start a cast and then shimmer away, because then you're making distance, but you're actually accomplishing something too. Like, you're doing damage, or you're getting a snare on them. Like, you need to combine shimmer with something at all times. Or, like, if this guy has a melee interrupt, like let's say DK interrupt is like this range, right? And you want to get a cast off on him, you could do that. And then when you're over here, you alter, and if he grips you in, then you can just alter back. And then you need to get this Glacial Spike off, and he's right on top of you again. You don't want to, you kind of want to wait for a second into the cast to do it. You don't want to like Glacial and then instantly blink away, because he could just grip you on that time, like this. Like, that's a lot of time to react to the grip, right? You kind of want him to think about kicking it, and then you shimmer when he like is about to kick you. So like, you cast it for a second, blink away as it's about to expire, then you send it. What else can I say with shimmer? You can use it for other purposes, like shimmer DB. It's not on GCD, because keep in mind shimmer's not on GCD, so you can do it instantly, right? Like, if you wanted to cancel this guy's fat heal that he's about to give, like shimmer DB, that's instant. Like, there's no counterplay to that. You blink directly off them, off the global, NTB. When you can do the same with CS, like let's say this guy is the healer, right? And you're sitting here and you're casting on this guy right here. Boom. Well, I'm out of line of the healer, right? I can't use CS on him. So you can cast, and then as soon as he thinks he's safe to, you can blink CS off GCV. So something to think about there as well. All right, I think that's all with the mobility and defensives. So let's go on to the next section here, which will be the being efficient under pressure. So we'll watch a game here in a second and we'll talk about that. All right, so this is the most important maybe part of the guide. We're going to be combining these two, the gameplay example commentary, with the being efficient under pressure section, because they are the same thing. That's the only way to explain how to be efficient under pressure, is to watch a situation where we are under heavy pressure and explain what is exactly going through my mind. So let's go ahead and watch some of these games. I'm not claiming that we are going to win any of these games. I don't remember the outcome of this lobby. I think this is a very difficult lobby because I thought this was a great lobby because it had it has 4 different things that you'll run into as a mage. You'll have a marksmanship hunter. So marksmanship hunters are the hardest class that you can fight, next to I think Ellie shamans. And it has a DK, which can be tough as well because DKs are really anti-caster. And then there's a caster in the lobby as well, Boomy. So it covers your biggest counter, it covers melees on you, especially your hardest counter melee. And then it has a caster in the lobby, so it will have some POV about fighting other casters as well. And we'll have a resto shaman in the lobby too. Resto shaman, just like Ellie shaman, are very disruptive because of the grounding totem and shear. So this is a great lobby for showcasing the pressure side of things, because we'll be under a lot of pressure in these games. In fact, we will probably lose most of these games, and it will give us a lot to talk about. So let's see how this first game goes. You can see I'm getting my dots out right now with orb into blizzard. I flurry into lance, and you can see here what I did already is I altered at a high amount of HP. Just like I was explaining in the defensive section, I was at a very high amount of HP, so I popped alter time, and you can see here I'm sitting right next to this pillar. I'm avoiding any purges. The hunter pushes in for the intim trap. So what do? He was coming in my line here, so you saw my movement. I sort of went to the left to avoid any purges. I'm still lining purges here, and I'm about to alter back now. So I alter back to 100% HP. During this entire time that I'm in alter, I'm still doing damage. See, I do my veins, my comet, my lance, my flurry, into frostfire bolt, into lance. Now that it's like a little sketchy and there's CC on my healer and he could potentially purge me now, I kind of chill for a second, rebuff, I alter back, and now I'm back to doing damage. So I'm just doing damage to the closest thing around me, flurry into lance. I mass shield since my team is kind of low and I needed one as well. But since they needed it, I opted to use the mass barrier first. I'm going for some casts here, so I try to get a frost bomb off on someone. Put ring of fire on the bars. True shot aura was active here, so at this point in time, we're gonna take a lot of damage from the hunter. We want to trade something here, or we need to line of sight. So I trade my wall, since that was the true shot rapid fire. I don't mind trading. This game is essentially comes down to like, not really a trading card game, but there are certain trades that you just have to make or you will die. I think a lot of people will go in and true shot will be popped, right? Like right here. And people wouldn't respect that cooldown enough. And they'll be like, what the marksman hunter just 100 O's me, nerf MM. I mean, like, yes, but also like trade something, right? Like I wall here on the damage. And then now that my shaman's in a full trap, I just opt to try to, well, I don't opt to try to line. And you can see that's why I take as much damage as I do. So I blink out of line, or I try to displace back for the tiny little heal that it gives. And then now at this point, like this is a perfect example. I'm not lining true shot. Like he pops true shot aura, which is his big button, is his icy veins. Marksmanship is a mage counter. I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's a perfect example of like how much pressure I'm under, and me not using my mobility to try to get away from this. So you can see I'm forced into my first ice block here. This is a low block. So I'm sitting in this right now until my shaman tops me up. Now that my shaman heals me to full HP, I come back out. I drop my orb, my blizzard, I re-barrier. I'm just kind of weaving in and out on this pillar, trying to avoid damage as much as I can while doing my own. I always weave in and off of pillars while I'm on GCD. So you can see I throw my lance, I'm on global, I go on the pillar so I can't take damage. I'm getting a little low here, so I just opt to line. Then I go for a sheep off of that asphyxiate, into a flurry, into a lance on the hunter, re-sheep the priest, flurry into lance, and you can see here I was about to line that wailing arrow. So that's why it's very important to play these corners as mage. You can see it's the second I walk out in the open, I have no ability to line anything. But now I'm still on this like corner, right? This hunter targets me and uses wailing arrow, but I have the ability to just walk around the corner as the cast is about to finish. I try to kick that clone and I miss, which gives the boomy precognition. I'm still just playing this corner here, trying to do as much damage as I can. I use blast wave to interrupt that clone. Since I missed my counter spell, I know he's going to continue to fish for cyclones. So my shaman gets put into a full clone, so I alter at a high amount of HP, 80%, and then I blink away from the purge targets, and I go for a shifting power to try to get some of my cooldowns back. Now that I'm in a safe spot here, and Boomy's skin just ended, I'm not under any immediate pressure, so I go ahead and try to get some important casts off, like Ring of Fire and Frostbomb. The hunter pushes up on me, so I alter back, and I blast wave, because I remembered my location was there. So look, I alter here, I blink away, I shift. I'm not under any pressure, I can cast. I go for a ring, the hunter's on me, I know he's in my alter spot, and since I'm out in the open, I can't avoid this aim shot, so I alter back on top of him, and I blast wave him off. And now I need to get to some sort of LOS. Since I get stunned there, I knew I was about to take a lot of damage being out in the open like that. So I blink, I trinket, and I shimmer to this corner, and I start playing this corner now. I kick Ultimate Penitence with Arena 3 CS because I see that this guy's getting low. We're trying to kill him here. I drop the Comet Storm Meteor Pet Nova. My guy gets put into a scatter, into a trap, but we have good CC. They traded out swap there. So the hunter is casting rapid fire on me, which is his biggest burst damage. They get a trap. He clones me low, which I don't fully mind. I cold snap during that time. Still under a lot of pressure here, so I need to get back to this corner so I can avoid any damage. Still just playing this corner. You can make corners out of anything. So True Shot Aura has been popped. Rapid Fire is on me. I'm forced into block again. So I come out because I know that right here they're just going to tap over to my DK and start killing him. So I come out and I do Veins, Frostfire Bolt into Lance, into Flurry, into Lance. I try to get a sheep here. Instantly breaks to the DK stuff. Another Frostfire into Flurry, into Comet. I have to shimmer back out of line here because remember, True Shot Aura is still up. So the hunter still has a lot of damage. So I can't tank too much. A rapid fire goes off on me and I go very low HP. So I shimmer back to avoid any damage. Re-barrier. I blink, or I peek out and CS the priest on healing school. So I can maybe try and win us the game here with a little bit of damage. But we're so low at this point. I alter for like a little bit of HP. This is like a desperation alter. Sometimes you'll have to do these. I know I said at this point you should only use it for mobility, but mobility doesn't help us here. I do need some sort of heal, and I'm at 30. So I get to about 26%, 24, 23, and then I go back to 33, so it's like a 10% heal. I alter back with a wall, so now I have 60% damage reduction. DB for a second. I try to sheep, but I get feared on it. Trying to just line best I can. I displace now for the heal as the hunter was about to get in my line to kill me. Still just playing this corner, and then I'm not the one who died, so to me, like that's a victory right there. But as you can see, whenever you're under a crazy amount of pressure like this, your damage is naturally just going to be lower. But you can see I even did the same amount of damage as the hunter pretty much, so that should be your goal, is to at least do a good amount of damage when you're under this amount of pressure. Because when you have to play this defensively, positionally, it doesn't let you get your important cast off. Like, you can't go for the, how many Ring of Fires did I get this game? Probably like 1 or 2. Like, that's the major difference there, is that I never really had time to stand in the open and cast a Ring of Fire, because the second I would do that, I would take a lot of HP. So let's get into the next game. This time I'm playing with a Boomy. So with this marksmanship hunter in stealth, I want to make sure I'm on a pillar as soon as I can. So I try to get close to this one, and now that I see where he's at, you can see I've already started ramping. I have my orb, I have my blizzard, I got my flurry out. Now I can pop my veins. I pop mirror images because that's like remember, a minor cooldown reduction that'll keep me healthy for just like a couple more seconds while I get to the pillar. The hunter pushes on top of me here, so I have 2 DPS on me, and the hunter's going for a trap. So what do? I alter. He goes for the purge. He doesn't get it, so now I know I can stay in his line. As long as I keep lining this priest, I can't be purged. So I'm going for some big damage here with Comet Storm, Meteor, Icy Veins. I'm going for a Spell Steal on that shield if I can. I alter back when I get a little bit lower there. And then now I'm in trouble here because I'm in the open and they have all their cooldowns out on me. If I blink anywhere, the DK will just grip me. So this is looking like a pretty obvious greater invisibility, as I need to buy myself time. So I use greater invisibility. So now I have damage reduction, and I try to get a Ring of Fire down with that. But then you can see I eat 2 interrupts. So this blizzard, this is something you guys can do. I know I'll immediately get gripped, so I know I have to work through interrupts here. So I alter back and I wall. This wall gives you some time to try to accomplish something. So use this 60% damage reduction to, first I cast a blizzard in an attempt to eat a kick on the frost school. So I try to get kicked, and then that allows me to Ring of Fire. But these guys are on top of their shit, and they double kicked me. So now I have to use the frost school. So I pet Nova, and I send in a shattered frostfire bolt, hits for 1.2 mil. And then now that I have a stun on the DK, that was very clutch, I'm able to use my blinks to try to get around the corner. I get gripped back out, of course, but I still have more options here. So I have another shimmer charge, another stun, and the fact that they're getting low. So you can see I kind of greed my second shimmer here, because with the momentum of things, I was able to hold on to that. You don't want to just like throw your shimmers away. That's my last shimmer for a long time, because I don't have alter to reset it. So I need to use this shimmer to somehow get a shifting power off here in the future. So I get a sheep on the healer. He trinkets it. Now since that was sort of like our turn, because we got them low and we got double trinket with IBF and healer trinket and all that stuff. Now it's kind of like their turn to do damage. So I position myself in a way where I won't take any damage. Now I'm trying to get Ring of Fire on cooldown before I shift. So I just try to get some stuff on cooldown here. I get gripped in, unfortunately, and since he was getting so low, I opted to change my priorities. I was looking for a shifting there, but instead, the hunter has got so low from the Ring of Fire and all these damaging, like flurry and lances that we're doing with Comet Storm, that I just opted to kick the healer and go for the kill instead. Now, since we kind of had like a little bit of extra pressure there, I just sort of get my orb out and I start tab targeting the other targets around me. Alright, let me check this whisper so that this isn't showing up the whole time here. Okay, now you can see that I'm just, so you can see a theme here too, is that whenever you force cooldowns on someone, you don't want to just instantly stop damaging. Like, I got turtle here, but I mean, we're playing in an expansion where damage is king, so I immediately just look at the DK and start bursting him now. So I notice that the the hunter is out of turtle, so I go back to attacking him. But I want to line the hunter at the same time, because the name of the game is avoiding damage while doing the most damage. You'll win 90% of the games doing this philosophy. So if I can stand right here and attack this DK who has no cooldowns as well, I would rather just do that while lining the hunter. That's how you can avoid a lot of pressure. So even though the hunter also has no cooldowns, and we've been kind of bullying him the whole game almost, there's no point for me to go back in this line when I could just hit this other guy. So I start doing that. You can see I continuously line. And then now I can't really push back there because the hunter pushes forward. If I were to go over here, I would be lining my healer. So I kind of have to sit here for a second. My healer gets put into some sort of CC. So I alter at 57%. And then I alter back now. So it's like a good rule of thumb is whenever your healer's in CC is the best time to alter. I should have actually done it here. But I was kind of in purge range, so I was a little scared to do it. But once that silence hits, I notice, and I'm like, okay, fuck. And I pop it like there. And then I'm able to kind of go back, and I'm able to greed my block in this situation. Don't have to trade it. And at the same time, I'm creating offense. I'm creating offense right here too, right? Like I just faked the DK's kick. Even though I'm about to die, I'm still thinking very offensively here. Because what I do, I get a DB right before I have to reposition my altar and go back. And then with that, I shimmer sheep because I know that after my shaman's CC is over and I altered back, I would be safe. So I go for a DB sheep there. Unfortunately, my booming kind of fucks me by cloning over it, but that was still a really good like balance between offense and defense. That's like one of kind of the key to being efficient while being trained is still being able to be offensively minded while knowing how healthy you are at any given moment. So we get a lot of cooldowns here. We get PS and we get anti-magic zone. So what do I do to avoid? So this, I use shimmer here, right? Right here. So I leave my displacement beacon on the pillar, and I'm keeping that in mind for any of the hunter spells now. So the hunter is going to cast aim shot here, and I displace to the pillar right as the cast was about to be finished right here. Let me slow it down. So the hunter is casting aim shot. I think I can get my sheep off first, so I finish the sheep cast and then displace back to the pillar to avoid that last second of the aim shot. But now they're pushing up on me and I'm getting very, very low. So I opt to ice block here. This is perfect too because that's on the ultimate penitence and on the CC coming out from the hunter there. So that's a perfect trade on the block, and that's only my first block because of how I was able to use my mobility, my displacement, my wall, and my altar, all to avoid having to use block because they were used so well. And at the same time, I used them in a way that was also generating us pressure and making me able to do damage. So now you can see I get a nice position here. You have to be in line of the center of the ring of fire to cast it. So I put myself in a position where it'll hit pretty much all the players and I can cast it safely without being interrupted. I get gripped into a binding, into a thing. I'm trying to get a polymorph off of this root beam that we have here, but I need to fake kick. So you can see me attempt to do it one time. This is how I attempt to get precog most of the time. So the DK has an interrupt. I can see that from Omnibar. I get blinded. I cast one, I trinket, and I go for a sheep cast off. But I don't commit to this, obviously, right? I would get kicked on Arcane. It's pretty blatant. He's right there. He sees me. So I cancel it about 30 to 45% of the way as an attempt to get precog. And what that would have done is allowed me to save my shimmer. But since I don't have time to do another fake before the root will end on the root beam, I just say, okay, I'm not going to go for the fake cast anymore. I'll cast sheep. Once it gets to about half, I shimmer, so it's not reactable. He can't grip it now. And then I get the sheep off. So I had to use a shimmer for that, but it's like, that's an attempt at getting precognition. And also, it's an attempt at knowing when, like, what window of time I have to attempt to get precog. And before it's, like, too much. Before you're sitting there forever and just casting sheep and canceling it and casting sheep and canceling it and not getting it. You don't want to do that too much. So I get the full sheep. I re-barrier myself. I spend my Fingers of Frost procs. I flurry into lance on the hunter. Or sorry, into Frost Fireball in the lance. Now I try to stand on a position in the pillar where I can cast while they're behind the pillar. without being in interrupt range. So I kind of stand like right here. The DK has to go all the way around to kick it, but it doesn't really matter because I'm in a safe spot. Notice I'm kicked on Frost, which allows me to still use all my arcane spells. So I kick the flash heal on the priest with counterspell. Now I'm trying to get some pressure off of that interrupt. So I do a flurry into Lance. And we get a full clone, and the healer has no trinket. So this is my cue to play very aggressively here, because in this next 6 seconds we can win. So I'm actually allowed to use my shimmer charges aggressively now if I need to. So I get gripped in. I'm just trying to kill here. So at this entire time I'm using offensive globals, because keep in mind shimmer's off the global. So this whole time you want to be doing offensive stuff too, like flurry into Lance. I get baby stunned, trying to get into his line. I send a Lance on the hunter. I flurry the hunter even though I'm getting low. I shimmer while I'm getting gripped, and I'm still using globals. I barrier, and the hunter dies. So now we have Mage Hunter. So this will be into the the caster and into the shaman. So the DK, you can see here, I start with distance. I don't want to just run into the DK, right? Like he's running at me, I'm running away. I want to get distance and force him to use one grip, because what is that going to do? Let's think about it for a second here, right? Let's pull out the notepad. So DK has 2 grips and A-bomb grip, right? Two grips plus an A-bomb grip, and we have a shimmer. So if he has to start the start of interaction, he starts by using 1 grip, 1 left, and has plus 1 A-bomb grip. So that's one grip, right? He has 1 left, and 1 A-bomb grip. I am sitting on 2 shimmers, displacement, altar, and then the altar, or the shimmer that I get from the altar, right? So he grips me in, and then I use 1 shimmer. Now, what am I down to? I'm down to 1 shimmer with all these. Then he uses 2nd grip. Now all he has left is A-bomb grip. Okay, I just got gripped in again. What do? I'll commit my altar time plus shimmer. Now I have distance, and he's not able to close that distance. So he might use something like AMS plus Death's Advance to get to me, right? And then he'll pop A-bomb. So now he's back on me and has A-bomb up. So I can't get away from him. So my altar time now. Altar time will bring me back to my original spot. But the A-bomb grip will grip me back to the position I was in. But I'm still sitting on 2 shimmers now, because I had that 1 left over. I had that 1 shimmer charge left over. So I used shimmer. Altar shimmer. Or sorry, I would have 1 shimmer here. So yeah, he gets on me, he A-bombs. My altar brings me back. I still have another shimmer here, so I'll use that. Now, what do I have left? I have displace. So let's say his grip is off cooldown at that point, right? So he grips me in. I can just displace back to my OG spot. And then at that point, I have successfully worked through all of the DK's mobility options and gotten away safely. And now he has no more for like 20 seconds. So I can barrier at this point to remove snare and then get away from him and make sure he's snared. Make sure DK is snared. So like, you have to understand that these interactions start from the beginning of the game. Like, you have to understand how to out mobility every single class. So by starting with this distance, it creates a chain reaction of events that are going to set you up to win the mobility trade. Like the game, like I said earlier, it's kind of like a trading card game. Like you have to really understand what class has how many of what, so that you know how to trade your own mobility into it without over trading it, so that you have enough options to actually get away. Because like I said, as mage, that's your defensive, is being able to do that into every class that can get on you, because you're not going to do as much damage when classes are training you. So you need to be able to out mobility people so you can get away from them and cast your spells and not be so reliant on getting precog every single round. So we're doing our mythic plus damage rotation. We're setting up ourselves to out mobility this DK. We flurry, we orb, we blizzard, we send our lance proc, we flurry, we veins, we comet, we pet nova, we ice lance. We ice lance. This is pretty chill so far. I'm just doing my damage rotation. I need to try to get a ring of fire out. I send my frostfire bolt into ice lance, into flurry, into a sheep attempt. So I'm taking a little bit of damage here. So what do? I try to position myself to avoid the boomy. So I'm taking less damage and I'm doing damage. So keep in mind, that's our philosophy here. Take as little damage as possible and do the most. So how can I position to make that possible? I line the boomy and hit the guy who's closer. Hit the closest target. That's a very good philosophy to operate under. You can see here we're doing a lot of damage so far. My healer's into a root beam. So I pop altar. I'm sitting on my counter spell right now, so I need to use that to potentially save my hunter. So I lock the cyclone that's off of the root beam, so he has no more follow-up CC, and my priest is hopefully able to top us up here now. So this is a 49% health altar. I was at 51% and I believe I canceled it. That was actually a misplay, and I'll show you why. So I'm at 49%. I glance down and I think I just see that it's red right here, and I'm like, okay, cancel. But this is bad because I have one shimmer. I need the Master of Time shimmer from resetting. So I'm okay with taking 2% of my HP to give me one shimmer back. So that was a bad cancel. That's why you can't just look down at the weak aura and be like, oh, red, cancel. You know, because you don't want to make that same mistake. So now he gets put into further CC. I'm low here, but I've already traded altar and a lot of other things to not have to block this go. Plus, you can see that this is the end of the CC chain, because that's how DRs work, right? Root beam. We kick the clone. So they're like, fuck, okay, our CC chain got interrupted. The shaman covered that nice and clutch with a cap totem. So now they're trying to get stuff off to continue the go. So they do a blind bash. But you can kind of tell that's the end of the CC chain, because these classes don't have more CC than that, other than maybe Strang. So I wall, and I'm just like, at this point, even though I'm low, I don't want to block, because I know that in 2 seconds I'll be completely fine. So then he gets the ultimate penitence off and I'm completely fine. All I had to trade was sort of my minor cooldowns with altar and wall. And you can see at the same time here, I'm never letting up on the gas pedal with my damage rotation. Flurry into lance, I wall, go for a little precog attempt with sheep, I get it. And then with that precog now, I get a sheep, I get more ice lances, I pet nova, I ring of fire to keep them nice and stationary so the ring of fire hits them. I re-sheep, I meteor comet storm the DK and flurry while it's in the air. Not the best way to do that, but because the first couple of ticks won't get shattered. Then I do double ice lance, and then I shimmer and I blink away from DK's LOS, so he can't grip or interrupt me. This will ensure that I get good value on shifting. I could have barriered before to get more value. Also, I could have orbed in a second. So this is not the most valuable shifting, because I have double shimmer here basically. I have my barrier and I have orb. So really all this shifting is giving me is wall, altar, and veins. So kind of like my major. Even though that is okay, it's not the most valuable. So these are the kind of shiftings you want to stay away from a little bit. You want to be mindful of, and keep in mind, guys, like I've been playing Mage for almost 10 years. I'm like a 6 or 7 times rank 1 at this point. I played in the AWC multiple times. Like, I'm still making these mistakes, right? So don't expect to play perfect. Just as long as you are aware of these things and you can improve on these every session, that's the human way of going about it. Like, that's, if you're trying to improve in the game, you have to take it one step at a time. You can't just like fix everything at once. So just keep that in mind. I rebuff here. I send out my orb because I want to get that increased Ice Lance damage proc. Not getting faked by Boomy. A lot of people will do this, or they'll send out a little cast like this in an attempt to get precog. You want to really condition yourself to only press CS. Like, you want to have a nice trigger finger, you know? Like, you want to not press CS there at the start of the cast. You want to wait for them to commit towards this ending part. You don't want to fall for the precog traps. So you need to like kind of condition your trigger finger a little bit on your CS to not just go off like as soon as you see someone going for a cast instantly. You can do that like if you're really quick, like and you get them, like he canceled it about here. If you can get them there, that's fine. But keep in mind, this is like the best time to go for precog because the normal human reaction speed is like somewhere in here, right? So by the time you see this cast, you think like your brain has to process cast and then tell your finger like to CS. Like there's a little bit of reaction in there, right? But just try not to fall for those. You can see here I'm going for a double casted Ring of Fire. And keep in mind the Shaman has Shear here. But when you eat it on Fire School, it's like not that bad. So I don't even go for a precog attempt on my Ring of Fire here. Because if I get sheared, I can just go into a Frost Bomb anyways. And then put the Ring of Fire down after the Frost Bomb. So I don't really go for precog on Fire School too much on Frost. I just kind of go for it. And then if I get kicked, I can simply go into another school. I do have a CS available. But he ordered it. I didn't fall for it. So I'm just Ring of Fire into Ice Lance, into Ice Lance, into Flurry, into Ice Lance. I Barrier. I go for a Sheep. I'm trying to fake Shear. I got it. I go for the Sheep. I got it. I'm in a Nova, so I blink in a direction where I can still hit someone. Keep in mind, blink doesn't really work on Z axis. So I'll show you right here. Roots. Trying to cast Sheep. If I were to just turn and blink like this way, it wouldn't work because I'm on the ramp. So I would have had to position my Shimmer to go this way. Sorry, you can't see my mouse. Wow. So it wouldn't work if I went this way on the Z axis because this ramp wouldn't move me anywhere. So I actually have to use my Shimmer to go back a little bit. Because keep in mind, if I blink this way, I'll still be like right here, which is in line of both targets. So that's kind of what I do. I Shimmer like this way a little bit. I'm still just going for damage. I go for the resheep. But my priest died. But anyways, these games have really, really good interactions in them. I'm kind of excited how you guys will respond to the guide. I think this is like really valuable information. And this is the kind of information that I will give to your exact gameplay through the coaching in the Discord. This is the exact thing that I'll be doing with you during the coaching. So I will literally give you direct feedback like I'm giving you now, but for your own gameplay. If you guys are interested in that, just another little plug there. But these games have some very nice interactions that I think will be helpful for a lot of people to learn. So let's back it up just a second here. We'll make this the last round here because even though I love long guides, as you guys know in the past, I don't want this one to like go too far over an hour, and I'm pretty sure we're like way past that. So we're gonna make this the last round here. So we go for the orb. Like I said at the start, something I'm learning from my own games is that I don't start with Ring of Fire as much as I advocate is good to do. Like I need to start with Ring of Fire more, because worst comes to worst, you get kicked on the Ring of Fire, right? And then you just go into the Blizzard anyways, and the orb in the Blizzard, but you got an interrupt out of the way first thing, so I can cast it again in 3 seconds. So you can see here, Incarn's been popped. I position on my little corner. I rebarrier before I peek out. I pop Veins, Comet Storm because they're all stacked up nicely. I Ring of Fire everyone because they're stacked up nicely. I Flurry, take the heal. Double Lance, Flurry, Lance, lance, and you can see this is a, so this is a very unique position where I have 2 lance procs, but you can still see me flurry for my lance. Remember those modifiers we talked about, the winter tide, where if you send a Fingers of Frost empowered ice lance into a flurry, it does 20% more damage, right? I always remember how I said that sending those Fingers of Frost empowered ice lances into the flurry charges is kind of less value, but it's just more burst because you're getting that winter tide value. This is a scenario where you would want to do that. So I throw the flurry, the CS, the lance, because in this particular scenario, we're trying to kill this guy in the duration of a lockout. So what we need is more burst. So instead of continuously sending lance procs, I send a flurry to empower those next 2. So like this next one right there, if that would have like crit, it maybe would have killed him because of that additional modifier on Wintertide. The only thing now is that I essentially lost out on a flurry because I used it for more burst when I could have just sent the normal Ice Lance procs and kept the flurry. So I do another one, flurry into lance. I'm just lining here a little bit so I'm not taking damage from Incarnate True Shot while still doing damage of my own. The hunter is about to own me here. I get kicked on frost, which is pretty scary, but I can still wall. So I wall. This is 60% damage reduction, guys. So you have to understand that, like, it's pretty hard to die. This is a True Shot rapid fire. That's the most damage that a hunter can do, okay? And he's doing it into wall. And we're the best target for a hunter to attack. Let's see how much damage we take with this wall. I don't even go down in HP. So like, you guys have to understand that when you pop greater invisibility, you're like immortal, kind of. Pretty much immortal. So you can see I'm trying to line. Trying to get my Ring of Fire down. And I want to attack the target that the Ring of Fire hits. So I'm just attacking the closest target pretty much always. I opt to do for an aggressive shimmer here. Let me try to understand why I did this. That was actually bad. Because now I'm out in a position to take damage. I have to get pain suppression. And now the positioning of the game is a little sketchy. So this is, if we want to talk a little bit about positioning, this is where it's bad. So the healer is behind me over here somewhere. The hunter is between me and my healer. So let's do like a little quiz here. Like, where should I stand to not die, right? If I go over here, I'm in line of these two and lining my healer, but I am lining the hunter. If I go over here, I'm still going to be in line of the Boomy and the Shaman, and I'm still lining the healer and the hunter. So this is an example of bad positioning because there's literally nowhere I can go to get healed. Even though my healer's in CC, I want to be in his line. So the best thing I can do is go behind my healer at this point. So since I have sort of like a fake positioning here, since I have my altar up, I didn't expect this lasso, so I'm going to have to trinket and altar back most likely. But he purged it at the end of that. Oh my god, I'm so bad. But then you can see the healer has to push in to heal me now. So now he's in a spot where the Boomy can easily CC him. So again, this is all snowballs from the bad positioning shimmer that I did at the start. This shimmer right here caused all of that to happen. That is, like, simply put, how positioning can change the momentum of the game so much. I had my good little pillar. I decide to push in to go for a kill instead of hitting the closest target, and I get put into a terrible spot, and the healer, I have to trade, and the healer gets put into an infinite amount of CC, and I might even die through my block here if I'm not careful. So I try to go back to that positioning I had before where I'm on my pillar. So keep in mind, I'm always doing damage too. So I backed it up 1 frame here. Don't have CS for this clone, so I'm trying to stop it in any other way. I have like a couple different ways. I barrier. I'm still doing damage. I'm pairing my shimmer with my minor cooldown, my mirror images. Now I'm just doing damage while I'm running away anyways, because I can't do anything else while I'm running. I might as well do damage. Now I'm on my pillar. I try to set up a ring of fire here. See, I'm barely getting that angle to where I can't be kicked. Then I set up on the closest target, the hunter. He dispels the frost bomb, which gives me a flurry charge back. Still just lancing. I decided to push out a little bit, but not too much, right? Like, I'm not pushing out a crazy amount. I'm just trying to share the damage for my healer a little bit. I kick the boomy. Now I'm trying to see, there's also a thing here where like you can have good positioning, but your team can't. Like, see how they're out in the open here, and their team is able to play all the way back here to avoid me, which causes me to have to push in to do damage. This is another example of bad positioning, but this is also why like, you alone having good positioning doesn't make it good, because these players being here makes it impossible for you to stand there to do damage. So I'm sort of forced to play in a weird spot now. So I go to this corner because I can avoid them while doing damage to one target. But at this point, it's just way too late in the game. Too many mistakes already made, and we go down. So yeah, that's gonna be it for the guide, guys. Actually, not quite. We have one more section here. We have the macros and the add-ons. So let's go over that really quickly, guys. Really quickly. All right, guys. Now we have the macros. We're gonna go over them really quickly. If you guys are interested in the macros, join my Discord channel here. We have almost 11K members at this point in time. We're trying to consistently grow this channel as much as we can. We have a lot of resources here in the Discord. We have the FAQ, we have the macros, and we have the updated talents for every different class that I play, if you want to get those. So you'll find the macros here. So let's go over those now. So the first one we use here is the DB macro. It cancels any cast and cancels any queued spell. It's a quality of life macro to make DB go off no matter what when you press it. So if we want to go over the lines on this macro to help you guys understand how macros work, and so you can write your own, we're going to ignore this first line because this is a bit advanced. But basically all show tooltip does is it makes whatever ability, it'll make a different ability show as the icon. So we can do this, for example, show tooltip ice barrier, and Dragon's Breath will show as ice barrier, but when I press it, it's still, the functionality is still Dragon's Breath. It just shows the icon of ice barrier and the cooldown of it as well. So if I did that, it would show the cooldown. So we use that on some macros, but all this first line is just to show the icon. And you can do some conditional stuff like known. So for example, DB switches with supernova. So if I swap to supernova, this will say, if known, it'll show supernova. And then this semicolon is basically an otherwise. So show tooltip, if it's known, show it as supernova, otherwise show it as DB. So that handles the tooltip. Now we need to add functionality to the macro. So stop casting is going to make it to where if I'm casting something and I press DB, it'll cancel the cast for me and just send the DB. So that'll make it to where it'll go off no matter what. CQS refers to a queued spell. So there's like, if I were to press barrier and then press mass barrier, when my GCD was at like 90%, it would queue the spell for me. So like I'll press mass barrier and then take my hands off the keyboard when I have it queued, like right here. Oh, that was too quick. Okay, we'll do it with shifting or orb. So we'll do mass barrier and then orb. So you can see I pressed it like a couple milliseconds, I think, before the GCD was over. So this is how you sort of do your rotation very smoothly without any gaps, is that you're like, that's why WoW players will spam their binds like multiple times when they're doing their rotation, right? They'll spam the button because they're trying to queue it at its earliest possible window so that there's no gap in between. There's no gap in between your globals. So this will cancel any queued spell if you accidentally queued one, and make sure that the DB goes off no matter what. And then I have slash cast Dragon's Breath and Supernova in there, and that'll just cast either one if I'm talented into one or the other. So that's going to be the DB macro. And then I have Fire Eater's Vial in there. It's like a little toy that makes like this green effect or whatever. It's pretty cool. So let me actually replace that one because I don't have the Supernova part in there. Buggers. And then now we'll go down the list here. So we have Cancel Alter. You can put this to show whatever tooltip you want. I put it as my barrier. And then, yeah, that'll just cancel the alter so you don't accidentally go back to a low amount. Arena 1 counterspell. So this is just going to cast at Arena 1 if it exists. And then otherwise, it'll just use counterspell normally. So this makes it to where you can still use your Arena 1 kick as a bind to kick people in BGs and duels and stuff like that. And this will just dismount you, show the tooltip of counterspell, stop casting, / cancel the queued spell, cancel you at a block, and then CS. So that if you're in a block too, you can come out if someone's casting and CS it right away. And then same thing for Arena 1 and Arena 2. And then for the polymorphs, we have Pet Follow on target and focus. I don't use Arena 1, 2, 3 CS. You guys can if you want. But for me, I use target focus. And the reason you want Pet Follow on there is because let's say you're casting sheep, but your guy is just like water jetting or like attacking him, right? Like I don't want to start the sheep cast and then have him the water bolt be mid-air. So anytime I press sheep, it stops my pet from casting so he doesn't break any polymorphs. Then we have, this is my stop casting macro, what I use to fake interrupts. So this is going to cancel block, cancel slow fall, stop casting, cancel queued spell, and dismount. It's my general cancel everything macro that I also use on my mouse wheel down to cancel casts. I think having this bound on something that isn't on your keyboard is the best because you can do it at an insane speed. Like you can't even see the cast as I'm pressing. Like it gives you full control over when you want to stop your cast. Whereas if I have to hit Shift 5 to conjure and then move it to like Shift R, that's just not as fast as having it on two different hands doing two different things right after another. Like doing this is slower than doing this, I guess. Mouse over focus, just so I can set people on my focus target when I'm not in an arena, because I have Arena 1, 2, and 3 focus binds. Focus spell steal, just so I can spell steal my focus target, so I can see the buffs here, and I can see the buffs here. I have my focus set to only showing purgeable spells. I do that through better Blizz plates. Once my add-on section is updated, my profiles will be available for that. And then I have Ice Nova and Frost Nova auto changing. It's basically just the same conditional. If Ring of Frost is known, Ring of Frost. If not, then Ice Nova, and then the functionality to cast both of those. So that when I change to Ring, if I ever play it, my Ice Nova will automatically change to Ring. But I have a separate bind there. Like Shift Q is my Ring bind, but I don't use Shift Q for Ice Nova because we used to have both. So I got really used to Shift button 5 being my Ice Nova. So I just use it to show the tooltip there, and then I have my actual Ice Nova bound over here, so I can use that little bind for it. And then my Frost specific macros, we talked about this one. Slash cast Icy Veins, Blood Fury if you're an Orc, you just want it to auto use, and then slash cast Freeze. That's just going to make your Pet Nova available. Whenever you Veins, your Pet Nova becomes available, and then you can just use the Pet Nova from it. Pet Attack on the Ice Lance, Pet Attack on Flurry, and then Rhyme is a Frost DK buff that you can spell steal, and it has the same animation as Brain Freeze. So it has this animation here. Let me get a Brain Freeze. Yeah, so when you steal Rhyme, let's say you're spell stealing a DK and you're trying to get like PI or something, but you accidentally get Rhyme, it's going to show this. And when you use your Flurry, it'll stay there and make you think that you have another one. So this cancels that buff. to make sure that you don't mistakenly think you have a flurry. That's called 10 years of experience right there. And then cursor blizzard, you want this so that whenever you blizzard, you can just, this is what blizzard normally looks like. It's like you have, and when I press mouse wheel up my blizzard bind, I have to use left click to guarantee that's the spot or whatever. But this macro die just makes it to wherever I mouse wheel up, it'll just instantly start blizzarding. This is very helpful for when you have those instant blizzards and you want to do it very rotationally, like you're trying to be very smooth with your globals. You don't have to, like, I can just place it and it can just be very smooth like that, you know? And that's going to be it for the macros, guys. So let's get quickly into a couple different add-ons that we use. All right, guys, very quickly, we're going to go over an add-on that you can set up to track auras. So tell me when. All right, this is the add-on we're using. All right, tell me when. Get used to it. It's a really good add-on. So I'm gonna have my profiles available soon for you guys, but I want to show you how to create your own tell me whens, because my add-ons, I'm not updating them yet because I don't have everything min-maxed yet. So we have this icon of 4 groups here. So right click for icon options. And that's all you need to know, really. So like you right click this and it opens up this. So you have a lot of different stuff that you can do here. So the one that you're going to be primarily doing is buff and debuff. This is just basic tracking any buff that's up here. So let's make icy veins. What do we want to track? We want to track icy veins. Click that one on the suggestions. We want to watch the player. We want to show the timer on it so that when it's active, it shows the timer, the sweep animation, like this thing that goes around, and we want to see the text number in the middle. And that's it. That's all you have to do to get an icon to show. If you want it to glow, then you go to notifications, animations, on show, activation border, play indefinitely, add notifications, animation, on hide, stop animation. So now that will glow when we icy veins. Now we want to add some procs that we like to track, right? Also, we need a second row here because we need more room. So we have to go to the group settings and let's add another row. So we do that. We want to change the size. We use this little 3 thing down here. So we have icy veins. Let's put that right there. Now we need to track icicles if we're playing, let's say, Glacial, for example. So what to track? Let's right click the one we want. We click buff, debuff, icicles. And you get the buff from looking up here. So it's like, oh, okay, I want to track icicles. That's the buff name. Okay. Let's look for that. Icicles. Oh, there it is. Let's show the, well, it's a 60-second cooldown, right? So we probably don't want the timer text to show because it's going to be there forever, and we need it to track the stacks. So if I make it track the cooldown number, it'll overlap with the stacks number, so we don't want that. So let's keep that there. And then what's another one? We need excess frost and excess fire, right? Like those are two pretty important ones because we need to know when we're going to get that flurry back on that living bomb. So those are called excess fire. We'll show the timer text. Excess frost. Excess frost. And I don't know, it'd be pretty helpful, I guess, if those glowed, but I'm not gonna go too crazy with the glow. So now when we pop veins, we have our little macros here. We can see, okay, now my next ice lance is going to show, or my next, so I need to turn timer text off for that. See how annoying that is? Now I know my next ice lance is gonna give me a flurry. So I know to use my flurry first, then I can ice lance, and then that living bomb will explode and give me my other flurry back. So I just keep doing that. And you'll see they'll pop up whenever you get them. So that's how you make those. I have a couple. I have just these ones here. Like I said, these aren't really optimized yet, but if you want to track your auras, that's how you're going to do it. So if you want to delete the group, you hit delete. And then the alter time weak aura, that one, I have the Aeghis complete weak aura package, which I offer for a small think it's like $4.99 in my Discord. However, I'm not done with this yet, so don't buy it. You can get all of my week orders for free. Don't worry, you don't have to buy it. But I have it available if you guys don't want to go through this entire process and blah 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 and do all this setup. I do have it all available, but like I said, it's not updated yet, guys. So just give me time to work on the add-ons. The expansion came out 2 days ago, so I need a little bit of time. But all of my add-ons, like this week or a section, has some of my outdated add-ons, but they still work, like the alter time one, the barrier absorb one that shows this number here whenever, so you know how much of a barrier that you have, so you wouldn't want to re-barrier right now because you're at 1,000,000, right? So these all still work. That's where you're going to get a lot of your weak auras until I'm updated with the pack. And those are the 2 add-ons we will go over mainly. There's a couple others like better blizz frames and plates, which we don't really need to discuss here because it's not exactly mage related. I just want to show you guys how to track your procs when you get them. And guys, that's gonna do it for the guide. I can't lie, I'm fried. I did this in one sitting. But let me know what you guys think of this guide. I really hope it helped. Let's try to blow this up as best we can if possible. I want this video to do super well to help all the mages out there who are just coming to the War Within for the first time. Spread this everywhere if you can. Post it on different socials and share it if you can. We're really trying to get our Twitch and YouTube going a little bit next level in this expansion. We're here. We're a full-time streamer, YouTuber, trying to grow, and I'm going to be providing content like this. Very passionate about WoW and helping other people. So let's try to just get things going here, all right? So hope you guys enjoyed the guide. I'm out. Check me out on Twitch, ttv/Aeghis. I'm live like every single day, pretty much. Maybe take like 1 or 2 days off a week, but yeah. Anyways, peace out, guys. Hope you enjoyed the guide. Later.